Chapter 559. Xiongmingming, tell me, how do you say Halloween in the United States? Poplar Fruit was so excited that he asked the children to stand up and answer the questions. Poplar Fruit, who had received a university education, understood that the old style of force-feeding was definitely not as effective as the new style of education where there was a lot of interaction between the teacher and the students. Therefore, he often threw out some small questions to guide the children to recall the small points of knowledge that he mixed in when telling stories. Xiongmingming was 1 year older than Xiong Xiaofeng, but his English was as bad as the other children. He stood up and racked his brain but could not think of anything. The short stories of Halloween, pumpkin lanterns, costume parties, door-to-door candy begging, and so on, all fascinated the children. After 2 or 3 days, they would probably be able to recite them with great familiarity. However, they couldn't remember the English Halloween stories no matter how hard they tried. Papa. Kiki, who was sitting in the front, only half of her head could be seen from the table. She shook her little but uneasily, raised her hand high, and shouted confidently, "I know." Poplar Fruit, of course, knew that she knew. Kiki inherited her father's memory. However, the little girl's desire to show off was too strong. She rushed to answer a few questions at the front. So Poplar Fruit decided to give the opportunity to the other children. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Kiki, put your hand down. We'll let Brother Mingming answer." Xiongmingming lowered his head in shame and said softly, "Teacher, I don't know." "It's okay." Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted him. "I'll give you a hint." At this time, the phone in his trouser pocket vibrated. Previously, he only turned off the sound and did not completely turn off the phone. Poplar Fruit reflexively pulled out the phone. He glanced at it and pressed the call. Then he put the phone on the podium and ignored it. "Teacher told you about it just now." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "The English of Halloween. The first few sounds like we usually say hello in English. How do we say hello in English?" Poplar Fruit had said this before. Because it was relatively simple, the children in the Hmong village said loudly, "Hello." "Right." Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Right then, how do you say Halloween in English?" Mingming, think about it again. "Hello. Hello." Xiongmingming scratched his head and repeated the words over and over again in deep thought. Yanghua saw that Chi-Chi was already somewhat unable to restrain herself from twisting and turning on the chair. He smiled and stretched out his hand to press the air, indicating that she should not be anxious. "I remember now." Xiongmingming's eyes lit up. Hawei asked, "It's Hawei who asked." Although his pronunciation was not accurate, he did not disappoint Poplar Fruit and remembered the word. Poplar Fruit clapped his hands and gave him a thumbs up with a smile. Then he praised, "Right, it's Halloween." Then he turned around and wrote the word on the old blackboard behind him. Then he taught the children to read it over and over again. After all, their English was poor. Except for Kiki, the other children made mistakes. However, Poplar Fruit was very patient. He walked to them one by one to correct their pronunciation. It was not until lunch that the children were reluctantly taken home by their parents. Several children from other Hmong village who came from afar were also taken home by their parents. Everyone in the village was quite poor. Although Poplar Fruit urged them to stay, they were too embarrassed to stay for lunch. They were worried that they would burden others. At this time, Poplar Fruit had time to pick up his phone and check the missed call. He called back. After a while, the call was connected. "Laogua." A voice full of resentment came from the receiver. Poplar Fruit took the phone away from his ear. Otherwise, his eardrums would have been broken. Hearing this name, everyone should know who the caller was. That's right, it was Song Jiwen. Kiki, who was being held by her father, heard the voice. She blinked her big watery eyes and asked curiously, "Uncle Mosquito? What did you do?" Poplar Fruit nodded to Kiki, then asked with a smile, "Why do you sound like a resentful woman? You're still talking about it." Song Jiwen wailed and said, "Didn't you finish the meeting long ago? Why aren't you back yet? How many days have you been wandering outside?" Poplar Fruit looked at the phone screen. It was indeed Song Jiwen. That was strange. This guy was heartless. When had he been so concerned about him? Poplar Fruit took his daughter to play outside. Fong Beibei often talked to him on the phone. His mother and other family members also asked him to tell them that he was safe. Song Jiwen's mother and Poplar Fruit's godmother, Lu Suqin, would also ask about his well-being. This was normal. But when did Song Jiwen become so concerned about him? Did the sun rise from the west? You don't have a fever, do you? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Hey, what are you talking about? Can't I care about you? Song Jiwen said confidently. With his daughter by his side, Poplar Fruit couldn't complain to Song Jiwen. He could only hold back his laughter and said, Come on, you care about me? If you have something to say, just say it. Don't be so weird. You're giving me goosebumps. Song Jiwen grumbled a few times in dissatisfaction. Then he told him the reason for his anger. That little pepper is here. It turned out that when Song Jiwen came back from work yesterday, he was humming a tune as he walked out of the elevator. He bumped into Chen Anlin, who was anxiously pacing back and forth in the corridor. To be exact, he almost bumped into Chen Anlin's back. In the end, Chen Anlin's conditioned reflex caused him to be thrown out by Chen Anlin, who thought he was a pervert. He fell until his bones were about to fall apart. It was a big deal to fall on all fours and lose face. Isn't she going back to school? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Why is she here in Yangcheng? After listening to Song Jiwen's explanation, Poplar Fruit found out that Chen Anlin somehow managed to convince the elders in her family. After getting permission, she came to Yangcheng to find a place to open a Taiji dojo. Chen Anlin was already in her 4th year of university. She didn't need to go to class. At most, she would have to go back to hand in her thesis and attend the graduation ceremony. Since the 4th year of university was a year of internship and job hunting, she could be considered to have met the school's requirements by starting her own business in Yangcheng. Of course, other than opening a dojo to test out her new management concept, Chen Anlin also had another purpose in coming to Yangcheng. That was to find Poplar Fruit to spar. So the moment she got off the plane, she went to the address Poplar Fruit gave her. Brother, I'm already calling you brother, Song Jiwen said with snot and tears. You don't know how bad little Pepper's temper is. Hurry up and come back to take her away. Chapter 560. Poplar Fruit could imagine how interesting it would be for Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin, who were like fire and water, to meet each other. Song Jiwen's blabbermouth and Chen Anlin's extraordinary martial arts were enough to make Song Jiwen suffer. Yesterday, Song Jiwen kindly asked her to stay for the night. In the end, the two of them fought 5 times in just a few hours. Rather than calling it a fight, it would be better to say that Song Jiwen was one-sided. It was the same in the morning. Chen Anlin woke up early like Poplar Fruit. She wanted to find a place to exercise, so she knocked on Song Jiwen's door. Stop. Poplar Fruit frowned and asked doubtfully. What do you mean by knocking on your door? Didn't you say that you let her stay overnight? Yes, I let her stay, Song Jiwen said confidently. I let her stay at your place. Poplar Fruit's veins twitched. He said in annoyance and amusement. It's not like you don't have room. Why did you let her stay in my room? Hey, why don't you think about it? She's a big girl. Is it appropriate for her to live in the same room with a man like me? Song Jiwen said hypocritically. Actually, he just didn't want to sleep on the sofa. My room hasn't been cleaned, Poplar Fruit said doubtfully. You've been out for more than a month. It must be smelly, right? Can she accept it? Of course not, Song Jiwen said proudly. It turned out that after Song Jiwen came back and saw that Poplar Fruit wasn't around, he often came to Poplar Fruit's study to play games. Sometimes he played too late, so he simply slept in Poplar Fruit's bedroom. In his words, he was making the best use of everything. I can't let you pay rent for nothing, Song Jiwen said. Poplar Fruit was really speechless about this shameless hardcore fan. Speaking of which, Chen Anlin knocked on Song Jiwen's door in the morning. He knocked several times but no one answered. Song Jiwen was a typical night owl. He slept soundly before 11 o'clock in the morning. How could Song Jiwen hear Chen Anlin knocking on the door? Later on, Chen Anlin increased his strength and knocked on the door so hard that the ground shook. However, Song Jiwen rolled up his blanket and went back to sleep. When Chen Anlin saw that Song Jiwen was ignoring her, Little Chili Pepper's temper flared up. She took 2 steps back and arched backwards. Suddenly, she sped up and jumped up. Her short but well-proportioned and beautiful right leg kicked out. Ka-cha! Bam! The thick wooden door was kicked open by her kick. Chen Anlin landed firmly on the ground. In a cloud of dust, she strode into Song Jiwen's bedroom. She pulled up Song Jiwen, who was sleeping soundly under the blanket, and gave him a good beating. Woo-woo. Song Jiwen pretended to cry. He was pretending. In fact, Chen Anlin did not hurt him at all. At first, Chen Anlin did not hit him well as he was blocked by the blanket. Later on, in a fit of anger, Chen Anlin yanked Song Jiwen's blanket over and threw it away. In the end, Song Jiwen was used to sleeping without clothes. When the blanket that blocked her line of sight flew to the other side, Song Jiwen appeared in front of her, naked except for a pair of red underwear. At this time, Song Jiwen was still sitting on the bed in a daze. He was still a little dazed after being forcefully woken up. Chen Anlin was embarrassed and angry. She screamed, covered her eyes and rushed out. Song Jiwen, who had just come back to his senses, screamed weakly. He pulled up the bedsheet and covered himself with it. His face was full of grief and anger, but no one looked at him. All right, you were just seen. And the person who saw it was a beauty. Poplar Fruit laughed. You didn't lose out. I don't care. Song Jiwen said sadly. Lao Gua Gua, or quickly come back and take her away. I can't live like this anymore. Yes, fighting all day. He couldn't even sleep in on weekends. Song Jiwen felt that his world was collapsing day by day. First of all, don't call me Guar. Just hearing it gives me goosebumps. Poplar Fruit said helplessly. The name Gua used to be exclusive to Lu Yunran. Ever since they broke up, Poplar Fruit had never heard it again. He didn't want to hear it from anyone else, especially a man. Secondly, I really have something to do now. I can't go back yet. Poplar Fruit said. I have to finish things here. Then what about her? Song Jiwen asked angrily. Just take care of her for a while. Poplar Fruit said speechlessly. Let's not talk about how she's our friend first. She's a girl in her early 20s who came all the way to Yangcheng. She's unfamiliar with the place and you're the only person she knows. If you don't take care of her, who will? But she still wants me to take care of her? I'll be thankful if she doesn't bully me. Song Jiwen still wanted to argue. What's there to but about? Poplar Fruit said. Don't always fight. You're 3 or 4 years older than her. Why don't you take a step back? Men need to be more open-minded, okay? I really don't know how you got girls in the past. Actually, Song Jiwen wasn't such a calculative person. It was just that every time he saw Chen Anlin, he couldn't help but want to make her angry. From another perspective, seeing Chen Anlin, Song Jiwen's desire to be abused increased. While I'm not back, Anlan can stay at my house. You can help take care of her. If she has any problems, you can help her. Poplar Fruit persuaded. Anlan is actually a good girl. If you talk to her nicely, she won't hit you. For this, Poplar Fruit asked for Chen Anlin's phone number. After lunch, he called her and mediated for them. However, whether it was useful or not, Poplar Fruit didn't know. At night, when Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were chatting, Poplar Fruit even told Fong Beibei about this matter as a joke. Is she staying at your place? Fong Beibei's attention wasn't on Song Jiwen and Chen Anlin's fight. She asked very sensitively. Poplar Fruit didn't notice. He smiled and said, yeah, Song Jiwen is too much of a scammer. But that's good too. Song Jiwen usually dresses casually at home. It's better not to let them hang out together. It's bad for the girl's reputation. Then what will you do when you come back? Fong Beibei seemed to be concerned. Where will you sleep? If she hasn't found a place to stay, then I'll sleep in the living room. Poplar Fruit said matter-of-factly. It's quite pitiful for a girl like her to come to Yangcheng. Chen Anlin. I think she's pretty just by hearing her name. Fong Beibei said as she pondered. She's really pretty. Poplar Fruit smiled. And she's very petite. She looks just like a junior high school student. But she's older than you. Don't call her sister when you see her, haha. Fong Beibei suddenly went silent. All that was left was her chaotic breathing. Poplar Fruit was still smiling foolishly. He didn't know that a sour atmosphere was surging. Chapter 561. Is the line disconnected? Poplar Fruit asked in confusion when he couldn't hear Fong Beibei's reply. The internet signal on the mountain wasn't very good, but the phone signal was still pretty good. Usually when he called, the line wouldn't suddenly be disconnected. No, Fong Beibei said angrily. Poplar Fruit laughed happily. That's good. Let me tell you, she also practices Tai Chi in the past. When I was in Yangcheng, I didn't see anyone who was good at Tai Chi after seeing her. I found out that they were all gathered in Huabei. Emph. Fong Beibei snorted in dissatisfaction. She's really good at it. Yang Gua hurriedly explained, although the direction was a bit off. Don't be fooled by the fact that she's a girl and has a small stature. Ordinary men can't even get close to her. If Song Jiwen meets her, he will only be beaten up. As he said that, Poplar Fruit even laughed to himself. Why do you keep talking about her? Fong Beibei finally couldn't hold it in and said angrily, Uncle, did you see that she has a child's face, and a good figure, so you're thinking of something bad again? Poplar Fruit, who was slow to react, finally understood that Fong Beibei was jealous. In fact, Fong Beibei's temper was already very good. Usually in the dormitory, she didn't even get angry with her roommates. However, no matter how good her temper was, she couldn't take it when she heard Poplar Fruit chattering nonstop about other girls being beautiful. No. Poplar Fruit quickly swore. I'm just friends with her. Why would I have any ideas about her? It's not like I like every girl I meet. Besides, I only have you in my heart. Poplar Fruit silently added in his heart. And Kiki. His skin was now very thick, and he could say such words without blushing or skipping a beat. When Fong Beibei heard what Poplar Fruit said, her anger had mostly dissipated. She snorted twice and said, Don't talk about her anymore. Okay, let's change the topic. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. School is about to start. Do you want to welcome the new students? Welcoming the freshmen was the most lively ceremony every year when freshmen entered the university. Freshmen like Fong Beibei were the main force in welcoming the freshmen. Poplar Fruit had participated in this event when he was in university. It was at that time that he met Duan Xueqing. However, after that one time, Poplar Fruit was as fearful as a ferocious tiger and did not participate a second time. It was too tiring to stand under the scorching sun to guide the freshmen and help carry their luggage. Fong Beibei was part of the student union of their university. Moreover, she remained as a department head at the end of the semester. Their student union should need her to participate in the welcoming ceremony. Moreover, even if Fong Beibei was not part of the student union, with her helpful personality, she would probably take the initiative to participate, right? That was why Poplar Fruit asked this question. I was going to go, Fong Beibei said helplessly, but I was still participating in the training. When school started, I couldn't leave, so I couldn't help much. That's a pity, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I still want to ask you to welcome me when I enter the university. Poplar Fruit was also joking with Fong Beibei. How could he bear to let Fong Beibei help him carry his luggage? Even if it was not a lot. If Fong Beibei wanted to volunteer to welcome the freshmen, Poplar Fruit would probably go and help. Do you also want me to welcome you? Fong Beibei's voice was clear and pleasant, making Poplar Fruit's little tricks unable to escape. You are the big brother, okay? Haha. Poplar Fruit laughed. Regardless of the past, I am now a freshman. Speaking of which, it was quite interesting. After graduation, he mingled in society for 2 years. In the end, he returned to his familiar alma mater and started anew as a new student. However, compared to 6 years ago, his identity and encounters were completely different. Poplar Fruit had a problem. After he went back to study, the university would definitely assign him a postgraduate dormitory. Then where would he live? Poplar Fruit could now be said to have 2 properties, although they were only rented. Plus the dormitory, there were 3 places. How could he choose where to live? What a happy problem. When I have classes, I will live in the teacher's dormitory. I don't think I can live in the dormitory. I still have to take care of Kiki. It's not good to bring the child to the dormitory and affect the roommates. Then on the weekends, I can go back to the big house to play for 2 days. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Live in the teacher's dormitory, Fong Beibei suddenly said. Yes, that's what I meant, Poplar Fruit said. I mean, you can live in the teacher's dormitory when you come back. Fong Beibei and he were talking about different things. It's so good in the teacher's dormitory. You don't have to sleep on the sofa. In the end, Fong Beibei was still brooding over Poplar Fruit's suggestion of living in the same room as Chen Anlin. Now she thought of such a good idea. Fong Beibei's unhappy expression just now was still lingering in Poplar Fruit's mind. Of course, he wouldn't continue to be confused by Fong Beibei's words. Don't worry, she should be living outside when she finds a place, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. She came to Yangcheng to open a dojo. There will be a place for her to live. However, the effect of his words wasn't obvious. Poplar Fruit pondered in his heart. He scratched his head and said, Of course, I like living in the teacher's dormitory the most because I can see you often. Who wants to see you? Fong Beibei said sweetly and pretended to be angry. Poplar Fruit could hear Fong Beibei's happiness. He was a little carried away and said casually, Beibei, I kind of missed last semester. Do you know the happiest thing in my life was coming back from outside and opening the door to see you cooking under the faint orange light in the kitchen? Why don't you come and live with me next semester? Hey, uncle, what are you up to now? Fong Beibei was startled by Poplar Fruit. Her voice suddenly went up an octave as if she had hit rock bottom. Fong Beibei was still a relatively simple girl. This simple didn't mean that she didn't know anything, but that her thoughts were still a little traditional. Just like the first time Poplar Fruit saw Fong Beibei, this girl was like a little white flower that could only be seen from afar and not profaned. Fong Beibei said unhappily, Don't forget. You still have half a month of observation. After Fong Beibei said that, she added a small warning. With your performance today, you'll lose points. Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. He wanted to slap himself. How did he get carried away? Proposing to live together was too big a step. Well, he almost pulled his balls. Fong Beibei wasn't really angry. It was just that Poplar Fruit had crossed the line and had to be given a yellow card warning. Chapter 562. At night, the Hmong village, which had very little nightlife, was quiet. Only the chirping of cicadas could be heard in the entire village. Kiki went to bed early on the mountain as well. Following her brothers and sisters around during the day had consumed a lot of her energy. However, Kiki's appetite had obviously increased due to the frequent running and playing, which made Poplar Fruit very happy. Poplar Fruit couldn't sleep so early. He lay on the rattan chair on the balcony and stared blankly at the computer. Of course, Yang Guo was actually thinking about something. She was multitasking. On one hand, she was thinking about what to teach the children in class tomorrow. On the other hand, she was studying how to perfect her plan to let the children be able to read books. Goldie was curled up next to Poplar Fruit, squinting its eyes and enjoying its owner's caress. Buzz. Buzz. The phone suddenly vibrated without warning. Goldie immediately felt it and sat up on its stomach with a quiver. Staying up late again. Poplar Fruit took out his phone and saw that it was Zheng Yujia calling. He mumbled and picked up the phone. Poplar Fruit patted Goldie's head and signaled it not to be nervous. He then smiled and said to Zheng Yujia, Why are you so late again? What's wrong with being late? It's not like I don't know that you're definitely not lying in bed at this time, Zheng Yujia said rudely. Hey, I'm just concerned about you, okay? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I sleep late because I have a good physique. You're a girl sleeping so late every day. Be careful that your eye bags will fall out before you're 30 years old. Oh, what should I do? I feel that my eye bags are really big recently. Zheng Yujia immediately changed her sweet voice and whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear. Poplar Fruit shivered as if he had poured a glass of ice water in winter. He said helplessly, What else can I do? Don't work so hard. Rest early. Alright, you called me so late at night. Is there any good news? I knew you were heartless. Zheng Yujia pursed her lips and patted the pillow next to her. I haven't called you for so long, and now you're talking about you. Your concern is just lip service, isn't it? Poplar Fruit laughed and said, You even care about this? It couldn't be, right? Yujia, you're much older than me. Just because I'm older than you, does that mean I can be ignored? Zheng Yujie was in high spirits today. She actually imitated my daughter and started to make a scene. She laughed and shouted, "I'm a girl. As a man, shouldn't you take the initiative to ask about her well-being? Why are you so anxious about those computers? Do you want to do a good deed to please your kind-hearted friend of my daughter?" Poplar Fruit was very rational and did not respond to this topic. He just smiled and explained, "I am concerned. Didn't I tell you not to stay up late and rest early? Besides, it's useless even if I say it. Aren't you doing it according to your own ideas?" The two of them chatted noisily for a while before returning to the main topic. "You really found it?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. "Found it? But do you know how hard it is to find it?" Zheng Yujie proudly took credit. "It has to be cheap and easy to use. There is no computer on the market that meets your requirements." "Then how did you find it?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "I asked my friend to go door to door in Zhongguancun and found someone in a basement." Zheng Yujie laughed. That person was called Kai Simin, a hardware expert. It was worth mentioning his education. Zheng Yujie said that Kai Simin was a person who came to work in Zhongguancun's computer city before graduating from junior high school. After 5 years in Zhongguancun, Kai Simin now opened a small computer assembly shop. In order to make his business the best, Kai Simin not only knew all the hardware produced by major manufacturers like the back of his hand, but he also taught himself to program, and even understood the Linux system. His business level is average. He doesn't make much money a year, but his computer assembly skills are the best in Zhongguancun's computer city. Zheng Yujie introduced. "So our computer was assembled by him?" Poplar Fruit asked excitedly. "That's right." Zheng Yujie laughed. "But it's a little different from ordinary computers." "A little different. Actually, it should be said that it changed from the inside to the outside. Kai Simin figured out a new computer with very low specs. The CPU, graphics card, memory, etc. were all the cheapest, and the system was also modified by him based on Linux. One had to know that the most common Windows system required a lot of configuration. For a computer like Kai Simin's, the hardware configuration was completely unable to support the simplest XP system. Therefore, Kai Simin could only use Linux to upgrade Android to 4, which was released last year. System 0 was modified to match the operating system of the computer screen. "It's called the Android Comet system," Zheng Yujie said. Not to mention how bad the name was, the Comet system couldn't be compatible with too many software. For example, common software like QQ would become very weird after being amplified by the Android Comet system. In order to complete this work, Kai Simin spent a lot of effort. He even carefully transplanted the open-source Firefox browser into the system. However, after it was launched, just like its name, it was like a comet across the sky. In the blink of an eye, not even its shadow could be seen. It wasn't hard to understand. His computer was sold for 1,500 yuan. But who couldn't afford to buy a computer in Zhongguancun for 2,000 to 3,000 yuan for a low-specs Windows computer? Since there was no difference in price, why would others want to buy his computer? Then why did we choose it? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "The specs are good. And it's cheap." Zheng Yujie laughed. "It's mainly because it's cheap. I asked someone, and he's willing to sell it for 1,000 yuan. "Didn't you say that the specs are very low?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "We can't buy inferior products for children just because it's cheap." "Low specs? Then it depends on what it's compared to." Zheng Yujie laughed. "It has 2 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of hard disk. Compared to the computers we use, it's really too small. However, compared to a mobile phone system, don't you think that the specs are already very high?" "I tried it with a prototype. Although I can't afford to play large games, I can still watch videos and use small applications like office software. Don't look down on the hard disk." Zheng Yujie turned into a technical enthusiast. She explained to Poplar Fruit. "Kai Simin said that we can spend some money to buy a small server, then he can build a workstation for us. It can supply at least 50 computers like his." Chapter 563. Poplar Fruit listened vaguely. His understanding of technical terms such as server and workstation stopped at the literal meaning. However, Zheng Yujie was obviously using other people's words to pretend that she did not know. When Poplar Fruit asked, she also did not understand. Anyway, you just need to understand that other than the software adaptation problem, the other aspects of this machine are still very good. Zheng Yujie said solemnly, I took it back and played with it. You didn't get cheated, did you? Poplar Fruit was still a little skeptical. If it's good, why is it so cheap? Why can't it be sold? Actually, this was a technical misunderstanding. Cheap not good, this logic was not completely correct. Kai Simin's Comet system computer was cheap because of its hardware configuration. A good motherboard could easily cost 700 to 800 yuan. And a memory card could easily cost a few hundred yuan, not to mention the CPU and other hardware. If one wanted to be cheap, then one had to work on the hardware. The motherboard did not need to be too good. Some domestic motherboards were produced a few years ago. After the test of time, the price was much cheaper. A memory card of 2 gigabytes was not expensive. One could get a good one for 1 or 200 yuan. As for the graphics card and CPU, those were bought as cheap as possible. Kai Huiman's Comet system did not rely too much on high configuration hardware. The only drawback of this computer now was that it could not run large-scale games. For video, as long as it was not the kind of 1080p movie that easily cost a few gigabytes, it could also handle it. If one put aside the game and the experience of some software, Kai Simin's computer was still very smooth and easy to use. Thus, it seemed that such a computer did not cater to Poplar Fruit's needs, right? Some people said that one did not need the best when buying things, only the most expensive. That was the behavior of a tycoon. For Poplar Fruit, suitable and cheap were what he needed the most. He wanted so many children to have the opportunity to obtain education through long-distance education. Thus, even if he had money, he could not simply spend the hardware purchase. For example, if the total cost of helping a child was 10,000 yuan, then if an extra 1,000 yuan was spent on a computer, then 10 computers would cost an extra 10,000 yuan. In other words, if Poplar Fruit spent money recklessly and bought 10 computers, then a child would lose the opportunity to receive help. I suddenly forgot. Zheng Yujie laughed. This computer, I feel like it's an upgraded version of the Little Tyrant learning machine. Saying that it was like the Little Tyrant learning machine was not because of its configuration, but because it was the same as the Little Tyrant learning machine. It did not have a display screen. It's like a big keyboard that's a little thick. Of course, it's also equipped with a mouse. Zheng Yujie found it funny when she thought about it. When you use it, you'll need an external display. Don't worry about the display. Zheng Yujie said, my aunt's company has a cooperation with Lenovo. They can sell us a batch of display screens that need to be cleared after the replacement at the price of 200 yuan each. Seems like it's quite good. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. Listening to Zheng Yujie's exaggerated descriptions, Poplar Fruit was very doubtful if it was really that good. He did not know how to make a decision now. Quick, give me the address. I'll get someone to send 2 over tomorrow for you to try. Zheng Yujie was very dissatisfied with Poplar Fruit's hesitation. She said hurriedly, try it out. If it doesn't work, I'll return it. Poplar Fruit read the address to Zheng Yujie, then added, remember to give my phone number to the delivery man. The mountain roads here are difficult to travel. When he arrives, I can pick him up. Got it. Zheng Yujie replied excitedly, then hung up the phone. Poplar Fruit suspected that she hung up the phone in such a hurry. Based on his understanding of Zheng Yujie's character, Poplar Fruit felt that this suspicion was very likely to become a reality. In fact, Zheng Yujie had done a lot of work behind the scenes. Although Poplar Fruit did not see it, he could still feel it. She had a lot of work in life to do, and she was also helping Poplar Fruit, the shopkeeper, to take care of Wan Hatiani, which they had invested in. Poplar Fruit just said hello, and she even asked a friend to help her inquire about the computer. It was definitely not easy to find Kai Simin in a basement in Zhongguancun. Poplar Fruit actually silently remembered these feelings in his heart. Poplar Fruit owed a lot of love debts, but there was no way he could give Zheng Yujie the love she craved the most. He could only find an opportunity to repay them one by one in the future. If it was really as Zheng Yujie said, then Poplar Fruit's plan might be very likely to be realized. Poplar Fruit did some calculations. There were about 100 children of the right age in Xiong village, and there were at least 300 children in the other two Hmong villages nearby. According to the basic equipment, a computer and a display screen would cost about 1,200 yuan per person. There might also be the purchase of other consumables such as plugs and network cables, so it would be 1,300 yuan. 300 people would be 390,000 yuan. In addition, every 50 people would be equipped with a small server that costs more than 4,000 yuan. There would be about 6 servers, which would be around 30,000 yuan. Other than that, there would be projectors, scanners, cameras, and other necessary equipment for long-distance education. It would only cost 500,000 yuan to give these children the opportunity to receive long-distance education. Although the equipment configuration was only the first small step in the implementation of Poplar Fruit's plan, from a budget point of view, the investment was the biggest part of Poplar Fruit's entire plan. Poplar Fruit had always insisted on doing charity, which was to spend the least amount of money to do the best thing. That was because the less money they spent on each unit, the more people they could help. After receiving the good news, Poplar Fruit became more and more energetic. He was so excited that he couldn't even fall asleep when he climbed back into bed. After a while, Poplar Fruit climbed out of bed and ran to the balcony to make a phone call. "Fat Dragon, what have you been doing recently? Are you busy?" Poplar Fruit knew that this guy who was more of a night owl than him was still awake in the middle of the night. "I'm not very busy, but I didn't waste any of your money. Our friend in South Yu Kingdom is now working on a very interesting game." Fat Dragon said. "Very interesting? Can I play?" Poplar Fruit curiously asked. "It hasn't been done yet. It's just an idea. That guy is writing the program day and night." Fat Dragon laughed. "Che." Poplar Fruit uninterestedly waved his hand and said, "Oh right, I'm not here to check on you. I have a private matter that I need your help with." "Okay. Whose computer do you want to hack?" Fat Dragon excitedly asked. "What are you thinking?" Poplar Fruit snappily laughed. "I want you to come over to my place and help me look at something." "Where are you?" "Fuck. Why did you go to that remote corner of Guishan province?" Fat Dragon glanced at the surveillance software on his phone and cried out. Chapter 564. Under the night sky, some people were happy, while others were sad. Poplar Fruit was full of joy after putting down the phone. However, he didn't know that Zheng Yujie, who was far away in Beijing, slowly slid down to sit at the foot of the bed after hanging up the phone. She closed her eyes tiredly along her white neck. Zheng Yujie wasn't as lively and confident as she appeared on the phone. These days, the pressure from her family made it hard for her to breathe. After a few days of crazy bombardment, even Zheng Yujie felt a little tired. However, Zheng Yujie didn't want to be like most girls, who would confide in the person they trusted the most when they encountered a problem. She gritted her teeth and bore everything she had suffered in the capital alone, unwilling to let Yonggua know. There were many reasons for this. She was worried that Poplar Fruit wouldn't be able to accept the negative actions of her family. She was also afraid that Poplar Fruit would be frightened by her family. However, most importantly, she still hoped that Poplar Fruit wouldn't come into contact with her, or the other side of her family. Now, Poplar Fruit was the last untainted female land in her heart. However, she really didn't have it easy recently. It all started a few days ago when she went home to have dinner with her grandfather. This time, it could be considered half a family gathering because Zheng Mingsheng, who hadn't been home for more than 2 months, finally came back. Unlike the last time when he suddenly came back, second uncle and youngest uncle rushed over after receiving the notice. Zheng Mingsheng's position in the Zheng family was second only to the current head of the family, Zheng Jianhua. However, with his official position, he was actually higher than Zheng Jianhua before he retired. However, Zheng Mingsheng was a filial son. To him, his father was his father. As long as his father was still alive, he still had the final say in the family. Zheng Yujie only came back when it was almost time for dinner. However, as soon as she came back, she found that the atmosphere in the house was a little heavy. "Mom, what happened?" Zheng Yujie held Deng Baoyan's hand a little worriedly and asked secretly, "It's nothing. Don't worry." Deng Baoyan forced a smile and said, looking at his expression, "How could he be fine?" Zheng Yujie frowned. She glanced around and found that the juniors were all confused. Only Zheng Taiming was sitting on the sofa with a bitter face. "You know it, don't you?" Zheng Yujie grabbed Zheng Taiming's ear and dragged him to the small balcony. "When Dad and Grandpa were talking in the study, I eavesdropped on them. You also know that if the door of our study isn't locked, it can't be soundproof," Zheng Taiming said honestly. "Cut the crap." Zheng Yujie raised her eyebrows. She had no interest in listening to Zheng Taiming's eavesdropping. "What happened?" Hey. Zheng Taiming was in so much pain that he broke free from Zheng Yujie's clutches. He rubbed his red ears for a long time before he said, "I can't hear you clearly." Seeing his sister's beautiful red phoenix eyes become fierce again, Zheng Taiming quickly got to the point. "It seems that Dad can't come back to Beijing to be the municipal party secretary. Why?" Zheng Yujie's heart suddenly jumped as she asked sternly. "I don't know." Zheng Taiming scratched his head and muttered. "Then he's still staying in Hubei province?" Zheng Yujie continued to ask. "No." Zheng Taiming shook his head. "If he's not coming back to Beijing and not staying in Hubei province, then where is he going?" Zheng Yujie asked anxiously. "I don't know. I didn't hear this before Mom caught me." Zheng Taiming lowered his head and said, You really?" Zheng Yujie didn't know what to say to him. She angrily pushed Zheng Taiming, pushed open the door and walked inside. Without looking back, she said, "Why can't you do anything right?" News had spread a few months ago that her father was going to be promoted to be the municipal party secretary in Beijing. Everyone in the family felt that it was a done deal. However, why did he suddenly change his mind at the last moment before the central government issued the order? With this in mind, Zheng Yujie was a little absent-minded while eating. Although she was eating with her chopsticks, her eyes were looking left and right at her father and several uncles. The atmosphere was very oppressive. Even the two usually naughty cousins and the youngest cousin were so scared that they only dared to bury their heads in the rice. They didn't even dare to make a sound. The only one who was calm was Zheng Jianhua, who had experienced countless ups and downs in his life. He ate and drank well, as if he was the only indifferent cliff in the storm. Zheng Mingxing didn't eat much. Instead, he had been drinking tea. He hesitated for a while before finally putting down the cup heavily. Bang! This sound gave everyone a fright. "Okay." Zheng Mingxing looked at his two younger brothers indifferently, then looked at Deng Baoyan sitting to his right. He said slowly in a voice that was neither soft nor soft, "Isn't it just a change in the transfer order? It's not like the sky is falling down. What are you worried about? I originally didn't want you children to know so early." Zheng Mingxing looked around at the third generation of the family. All of them had their heads lowered. He felt a little sad in his heart. Zheng Mingxing's ability to be an official was obvious to all. It could be said that among the many large families in Beijing, there might not be many as outstanding as him. When he was walking on the path of an official, Zheng Jianhua's help could be said to be very little. Even for several decades, he didn't receive much help from the family. However, he still fought his way from the secretary of a county magistrate in a remote county to the current position of the leader of Hubei province. If his journey was written, it would definitely be a very inspirational official novel. However, Zheng Mingxing himself was doing very well as an official, but the Zheng family had always been in a state of not being very popular. In the second generation, other than him carrying the banner, the other second and third brothers, as well as the fourth sister who didn't come today, all wasted their youth on a piece of newspaper and a pot of tea. As for the third generation, Zheng Mingxing was even more disappointed. Zheng Yujie was still working hard and made some achievements in the publishing house, but she didn't walk on the path of an official. Of course, she was a girl and couldn't ask for too much. Zheng Mingxing, whom he had high hopes for, was quite smart, but it was only in small matters. He was also lazy and gluttonous. At least for now, he had always disappointed Zheng Mingxing. Needless to say, the other third-generation juniors were too cowardly and couldn't be put in an important position. Do I really have to find a large family for marriage? This thought flashed through Zheng Mingxing's mind. However, The pride in his heart made him immediately throw this thought to the back of his mind. Speaking of which, it was quite interesting. Zheng Mingxing wasn't a stubborn person. Otherwise he wouldn't have come so far. However, there was an indomitable and proud soul hidden in his body. He didn't think that it was shameful to find a backer through political marriage, but he wouldn't allow himself to do so. He believed that his own ability could do better than finding a backer. Zheng Yujie had inherited this stubbornness from her father. Chapter 565. It was another clear morning. The sun had yet to rise, but the sky was still as bright as a blue mirror. If one looked far into the western horizon, one could still see the pale white moon that had yet to set below the horizon. At this time, the mountain was very humid. The water vapor condensed in the forest and finally accumulated into pearl-sized water droplets. The fluff on the young leaves could no longer hold on to the water droplets and finally rolled off the tall tung trees, falling onto the green leaves and breaking into pieces. Bang! There was a soft muffled sound. A large foot wearing a sports shoe stepped on the dewy leaves, startling the little bugs that were hiding at the roots of the grass, and causing them to flee in a hurry. The shadows of the feet crisscrossed, either drawing circles in the horse stance, jumping and kicking, or dragging like a snake, stirring up the quiet forest to become unusually lively. It was Poplar Fruit who was practicing his punches and kicks. There was a commotion in the branches and leaves. In the dense forest, a figure carrying 2 sabers slowly walked out. As usual, Xiongkehu came more than an hour later than Poplar Fruit. After all, he was getting old. Xiongkehu's body was getting lazier and lazier. He could no longer dance at the sound of the rooster like when he was young. However, even when he was young, he could not wake up at 4 in the morning every day. In this world, the only monster who could almost not sleep and rest was Poplar Fruit. After Xiongkehu walked up the mountain, he was still panting slightly. The 2 Miaodao on his back were also unfastened and leaned against a big tree beside him. He did not disturb Poplar Fruit. Instead, he curiously watched for a while until Poplar Fruit stopped by himself. "What kind of punch is that?" Xiongkehu asked with a puzzled face. The set of martial arts that Poplar Fruit had just practiced. Actually, it was not a set, was very strange. It did not look like any of the ancient Chinese martial arts that Xiongkehu had seen before, but he could still see the shadow of those mainstream fist and kick kung fu in it. Familiar yet unfamiliar fist techniques could be described with such words. If it was a kung fu that he did not recognize, Xiongkehu would not make a fuss. After all, the world was big. What kind of strange kung fu was there? Even if he had been in the martial arts world for decades and had seen many things, he could not guarantee that he had seen all kinds of moves before. The real reason why Xiongkehu couldn't help but ask this question was because Poplar Fruit's kung fu was too simple. A punch was a punch, and a kick was a kick. There was a clear distinction between them. There were no complicated twists and turns. His footwork was only at the beginner level of moving forward and backward, moving left and right. At most, there was a turnaround movement that required some skill. If Xiongkehu had not seen Poplar Fruit practice Taiji Fist and Xingyi Fist before, he would have thought that Poplar Fruit was a clumsy beginner. Poplar Fruit wiped the water droplets off his forehead. They were not sweat, but water droplets from the trees. The mist in the mountains was too thick. His hair was wet and stuck to his forehead. He chuckled and said, "Master, there's no name. I made it up myself." After Xiongkehu started teaching him the Miaodao technique, Poplar Fruit started calling him Master Xiongkehu. He even laughed in his heart, because he used to practice according to his dreams. When people asked about his master, he really didn't know how to answer. Now that he had a real master, he didn't have to make up stories to deceive people. Xiongkehu being Poplar Fruit's master, although Xiongkehu did not directly agree, was a blessing for Poplar Fruit. Xiongkehu's ancestral dual Miaodao technique was also famous in the martial arts world. It was just that few people knew about it after he lived in seclusion in the mountains. As for Xiongkehu, he was already very strong. When he was at his peak, he killed so many people in the southwest battlefield that the enemy's command center was in a state of panic. If it was in the past, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he could become a master of his generation with his saber skills. Even though he was over 70 years old, he could still wield the two Miaodao without a single blade touching him. This made Poplar Fruit admire him. You want to create your own martial arts when you haven't even practiced your own martial arts? Xiongke finally understood why Poplar Fruit's martial arts looked so childish. He scolded him unhappily. There are no shortcuts in the path of martial arts. How can you fly when you haven't even learned how to walk? Xiongke lectured Poplar Fruit for more than 10 minutes, because he wanted to change Poplar Fruit's scary idea. In his opinion, there were very few martial arts masters in history who could truly establish their own sect. Moreover, the martial arts of today were all mature and it was very difficult to innovate. Instead of wasting time and energy on creating their own martial arts, it was better to practice the martial arts that they had learned until they were solid. Xiongke's thinking was more traditional, especially when it came to respecting one's teacher. Heaven, earth, ruler, family, and teacher. Teachers were second only to parents and elders. Similarly, they could not be disobeyed. The children in the Miao Stockade village who learned martial arts from him had to abide by the disciples' rules before they entered the sect. Even though Poplar Fruit was not considered an official disciple, he had experienced Xiongke's strictness when he first learned martial arts from him. Yes. In front of him, Poplar Fruit could only bite the bullet and listen obediently. After Xiongke scolded him to his heart's content, Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry as he explained to him. In fact, Poplar Fruit was not as ambitious as Xiongke thought. He had never thought of creating his own martial arts and establishing his own sect. He did not even think of innovating. I just want to create a set of simple martial arts moves to teach Kiki, Poplar Fruit said with a bitter smile. The ones we practice are too difficult for her to learn. In pursuit of simplicity and practicality, Poplar Fruit's inspiration came from square dancing performed by aunties. Square dancing did not have any fancy or difficult moves. Most of the time, it was just waving and twisting along with the music. However, the reason why square dancing was popular for so long was because it was easy to learn. It could train the body and satisfy Auntie's dancing dreams. Therefore, instead of saying that he wanted to teach Kiki martial arts, it was more like he wanted to let Kiki play around with it. In this way, Poplar Fruit forgot about being one with nature and being good at both offense and defense. Poplar Fruit was purely breaking up all the martial arts he had learned. He did not want those that were too difficult to learn, those that were too tiring after a few moves, and those that could easily injure others or hurt others. He only wanted the moves that met his requirements. In the end, he mixed those moves together like a choreographer. Poplar Fruit was still trying and modifying them. That was why Xiongke saw Poplar Fruit practicing intermittently like a beginner. For the sake of the child, you've put in a lot of effort. Xiongke reluctantly accepted Poplar Fruit's explanation and said with a slight nod. However, he obviously had no interest in this somewhat playful idea. He picked up the two Miaodao and began to urge Poplar Fruit again. Have you practiced the 24 Miaodao today? Hurry up and revise for me. Chapter 566. Even though he wasn't planning on innovating the moves, it was still not easy to create a new kung fu from scratch. Poplar Fruit was more open-minded about this, so he wasn't in a hurry to succeed. After practicing with Xiongke for an hour, Poplar Fruit helped his master carry the saber. The two of them walked side by side towards the Miao Stockade village. By the way, master, I'm planning to go to the county today. Do you want to come along? Poplar Fruit smiled. Why would I go? I've traveled extensively when I was young, so it's not like I haven't seen the world, Xiongke replied casually. However, he suddenly thought of something and turned his head abruptly. He looked into Poplar Fruit's eyes and asked, why do you suddenly want to go to the county? Is there news about the long-distance education you mentioned before? Poplar Fruit nodded and said honestly, there is news. My friend sent a few samples from Beijing to try it out. However, I'm not going to the county today for those computers. Teacher Meng's son is a leader in the county's education bureau. Poplar Fruit explained to Xiongke, who was confused. You want to find Meng Ping? It's useless. Xiongke waved his hand and said dispiritedly, I thought you were going to say something. Don't even think about asking him for help. When his father was still around, he didn't even help much. Even if he's the deputy director now and uses his power to suppress others, he still needs someone to be willing to go up the mountain. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Master, you misunderstood me again. I'm not asking him to find us a teacher. As long as my long-distance education is successful, the teacher can directly teach the children in the county. How is that possible? If the teacher isn't around, how can we teach? After all, Xiongkahu was not a young man. Furthermore, he had lived in the mountains for a long time, far away from the high-tech era. It was difficult to explain the logic behind it to him. Last time, Poplar Fruit had tried very hard to explain it to him, but he still did not understand it. Poplar Fruit said helplessly, Yes, master. Don't worry. You'll know when those computers arrive. This time, I went to find Mengping to see if the county can build the basic facilities for the children. This way, the long-distance education I mentioned can operate. Just having a computer was not enough. The village also lacked internet. If there was no internet, how could there be long-distance education? In addition, Poplar Fruit found that the electricity supply in the village was somewhat insufficient. The people in the village did not have high-power appliances such as air conditioners and refrigerators. Usually, they used most of their electricity for lights. Even so, the expensive electricity bill was unacceptable. Therefore, if he wanted the coming equipment to be able to operate, and if he wanted his plan to be successful, Poplar Fruit would have to wire up the computer room in the future. He also had to connect the isolated Miao village to the internet. This kind of thing could not be done by Poplar Fruit with money. He needed official support. In this small county, the only person Poplar Fruit could find was the angry director, Mengping. Previously, when he was telling the children stories, Poplar Fruit had promised that he would bring the two children who answered questions the most diligently and accurately to the county to play. Today he had found the opportunity. After breakfast, under the envious gazes of a group of small heads, Yanghua hugged Chi-Chi and placed her on her neck. Then, she brought the two children down the mountain with their heads held high like proud little swans. Together with them was a young man from the village and Xiongxiaolan. Poplar Fruit was going to talk to Mengping about something, so the responsibility of bringing the two children around the city was handed over to Xiongxiaolan. Poplar Fruit also considered their safety, so he pulled a young man from the village to be their bodyguard. After more than an hour, they arrived at the foot of the mountain and took the Land Rover. It was much more comfortable after that. It would take another hour to reach the county. Through the rearview mirror, Poplar Fruit looked at the Miao young man who was sitting in the back. He smiled and asked, Jisher, do you know how to drive? I heard from Master Xiong that you used to work in the south. Xiong Jisher was also one of Xiongkahu's disciples. Poplar Fruit had sparred with him before. His knife skills were good, but his lower body was not very solid. He was easily shaken by Poplar Fruit's fake movements. The luxury car and the comfortable feeling brought by the leather sofa made Xiong Jisher feel a little unreal. He sat in the back and didn't know where to put his hands and feet, for fear of dirtying the car. Brother Yang, I don't know how to drive. Xiong Jisher said in embarrassment. Well, I was thinking of leaving the car for you to drive the children to play. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, How about this? I'll drop you off on the side of the road. You take them back to the place and wait for me at 5 o'clock in the evening. If there's anything urgent, find a public phone and call me. Are you familiar with the roads in the county? Yes. Xiong Jisher quickly replied. Some time ago, I often went to the county to sell vegetables with my father, so I still know the roads. So the car drove to the county. Poplar Fruit parked the car in the most prosperous shopping mall in the county. Xiong Jisher and Xiongxiaolan were fine. The two children who left the mountain for the first time couldn't hold back the joy in their hearts and jumped out of the car. Their black eyes kept looking around. They had grown up in the mountains, so when had they ever seen such a big square and such a tall building? Poplar Fruit got out of the car, took out 500 yuan from his wallet, and handed it to Xiong Jisher. Brother Yang, I can't take it. Xiong Jisher desperately wiped his hands on his trousers and stepped back in embarrassment. Poplar Fruit laughed and stuffed the money into Xiong Jisher's hands without any explanation. He pulled him and said, Take it, I'm not giving it to you. Why are you so shy? Take this money and see what the children want to buy. You can also take them to eat something delicious at noon. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. It's rare for you to come out, so don't be stingy with the money. Poplar Fruit patted Xiong Xiaolin's head and said, Xiaolin, you have to take good care of your brother and sister. Also, you have to supervise Uncle Jisher. This 500 yuan has to be spent today. Used up. Xiong Jisher was shocked. 500 yuan was a few months' worth of living expenses for them. It was too extravagant to spend it all in one day. Poplar Fruit said seriously, Yes, you have to spend it all. If you can't spend it all, I'll deal with you later. Finally, Poplar Fruit gave Xiong Jisher his phone number and left with Kiki. In fact, Chi-Chi had been crying and making a fuss to stay and play with the little sisters and little brothers, but Yanggua still dragged her into the car. It wasn't that he didn't trust Xiong Jisher, but Poplar Fruit was really worried. Last time, when Kiki was almost taken away by human traffickers, it had left a big psychological shadow on him. In Meng Village it was fine. The place was small, and there were familiar people everywhere. It was convenient to find her, but in this bustling small town downtown, Poplar Fruit couldn't let Kiki out of his sight. Chapter 567. Before coming, Poplar Fruit had never imagined that it would be so difficult to convince someone. Meng Ping was not only a nationalistic youth, but also a stubborn fellow. His mind was like an old and hard bone. First, he couldn't find a place to chew on it. When he did, he realized that he couldn't chew on it even if all his teeth were broken. Poplar Fruit's request for his help wasn't too much. He just wanted to ask for his help in finding connections to settle the matter of the network and circuit. Of course, Poplar Fruit also hoped that the county could use the salary saved from the lack of a teacher on the mountain. First, they could build the infrastructure. Then they could pay for the monthly electricity and network fees. Logically speaking, this request was reasonable. After all, the county didn't have the ability to hire a teacher to teach these children. This was the fault of the government. Poplar Fruit had already racked his brains, and even used his own money to help the government fill this huge hole. Shouldn't the government do something? Of course, Meng Ping didn't evade this aspect. In fact, he hadn't even thought of this aspect. When Meng Ping heard Poplar Fruit's request, he immediately exploded. No teacher? Online teaching? That's wishful thinking. With a teacher watching and urging them, the younger children won't be able to concentrate on their studies. Do you expect them to have so much self-control to be willing to study? Of course, Poplar Fruit had considered this problem before. However, Poplar Fruit felt that this had nothing to do with having a teacher by their side. It wasn't that the younger children couldn't sit still. For example, Xiong Xiaofeng was an active and playful child. He could play in front of a tablet for an entire day without moving. Therefore, as long as they didn't have ADHD, they had the potential to study hard. There are two ways to get them to sit firmly in front of the bench and listen to the lesson attentively and study earnestly. One is to force them. In reality, this is often the case. For example, many children in the city do not want to learn the piano, but they are still forced by their parents to sit in front of the piano for several hours. The other is to give them sufficient motivation to study. Sometimes, the motivation to learn was supported by rewards. For example, Poplar Fruit had previously proposed that he would bring the children who performed well to the county to play. Later, almost all the children rushed to answer the questions, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Sometimes, the motivation to learn was the student's own will. That would require the content and method of the teacher's lecture to be interesting enough, just like those games and cartoons, to be able to attract the student to study wholeheartedly. The latter was not easy. Even Poplar Fruit himself did not have such strong confidence. However, there was one thing that was worth affirming, and that was that multimedia teaching through computers was much more interesting than the traditional education model of writing on the blackboard that was commonly used in backward small counties. In addition, Poplar Fruit did not want to stick to one method. He hoped to solve the problem of not having a teacher in the classroom by using a multi-pronged approach. First of all, the teaching method naturally had to be innovative, and the content of the lesson also had to be innovative. Secondly, perhaps Teacher Meng's previous reward method could also be used as a reference. For example, giving the students who performed well and ranked at the top of the exam the opportunity to visit the big city or Higashiyama University, to encourage them to study hard. Finally, Poplar Fruit would still let Shionkahu or let him choose an honest and kind villager to help manage the children. Like a life teacher, he would urge them to listen well in class and complete their homework on time. The plan was linked, and the main purpose was to let all the children in the mountainous areas be able to find a way out of the mountainous areas through learning. Poplar Fruit spent a lot of effort to explain his idea to Meng Ping. During the process, he was constantly questioned and refuted by the stubborn Meng Ping. Okay, even if what you said is right, let's see if it is really as effective as you said. Meng Ping finally reluctantly approved Poplar Fruit's long-distance education. But he was conflicted on another issue. No means no. This is against the rules. Meng Ping actually ran into the room and took out a book called Civil Servant Code of Conduct, and flipped it open for Poplar Fruit to read. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the sentence that he had specially circled and read. You are not allowed to take advantage of your position as a supervisor, manager, or manager of public funds to use public funds for other purposes without legal approval. From the corner of the book that was flipped open, this guy probably treated this book as a holy book. Even now that he was a deputy bureau chief, he still frequently flipped through this book. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to be speechless or impressed by such a stubborn person. But for such a devout and upright person to exist in the filthy officialdom, it was truly a miracle. Perhaps, it wasn't an exaggeration to compare him to the national treasure of the officialdom, the panda. Uncle Meng, I'm not asking you to break the law, Poplar Fruit said helplessly. And this isn't illegal. You just need to do us a favor and report to the higher-ups to see if this money can be used to pay for our internet and electricity bills. Isn't this also supporting the education in the mountainous areas? It's still not legal approval. If we get the approval of the higher-ups, this won't be considered misappropriation of public funds. Poplar Fruit persuaded. Impossible, the higher-ups won't agree. Meng Ping said solemnly. When this money was allocated, it was indicated that it was used for rural grassroots education. How could they let you use it to pay for your internet bills? That's ridiculous. Poplar Fruit covered his forehead. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He sighed and calmed himself down before saying, Uncle Meng, the government's orders aren't set in stone. We can't hire a teacher right now, so what's the point of having this special fund? Why don't you report it to the higher-ups and ask? Maybe we can really do something special. Later on, Poplar Fruit's mouth was dry, but he still couldn't convince Meng Ping, whose thoughts were already so stubborn. In the end, he was about to give up. But he accidentally mentioned Teacher Meng's biggest wish when he was alive, and the situation took a turn for the better. It had to be said that Meng Ping was really a filial son, a very filial son. After Poplar Fruit noticed the change in his expression, he used Teacher Meng to persuade him. I believe that Teacher Meng must be looking forward to seeing the children in the mountains continue to go to school next semester. You just need to help report it. You don't need to do anything illegal. Help a bunch of children, right? Teacher Meng will understand and support you. Poplar Fruit patted his chest and said. Meng Ping's expression kept changing. He was constantly struggling in his heart. In the end, he let out a long sigh and didn't insist on his position. He nodded his head and agreed to Poplar Fruit's request. Carrying Kiki out of the Meng residence, not only did Kiki feel dizzy, even Poplar Fruit himself felt exhausted. He wished he could find a big bed and throw himself on it to rest for a few hours. Chapter 568. Poplar Fruit originally planned to invite Meng Ping to dinner with the children in the evening, but he was almost inhumanely refused, so Poplar Fruit had to go to the square in advance to find Xiong Jisher and the others. Papa, that uncle is so fierce. Kiki sat in the passenger seat and couldn't help muttering, Let's not go to his place again, okay? The little girl was very resentful that she couldn't play with the little sisters and little brothers. When they were in Meng Ping's house just now, Kiki didn't dare to make a noise, but her constant small movements still exposed her impatience and unhappiness. Poplar Fruit's back was a little red because of her little claws. Poplar Fruit didn't say anything, just let go of the gear handle, smiled and gently touched Kiki's little head. To be honest, he didn't want to go to Meng Ping's place anymore. If he talked to Meng Ping, he would be choked to death sooner or later. When they arrived at the place, Poplar Fruit thought that Xiong Jisher and the others shouldn't be waiting there, so he wanted to find a place to park first. As a result, Kiki, who had sharp eyes, saw Xiong Xiaolin at a glance. Sister Xiaolin. Kiki's cloudy mood turned sunny, and she shouted excitedly. Kiki's baby safety seat was a little high, so even though she was short, she could still see the situation outside the front windshield. Poplar Fruit looked in the direction where Kiki's little hand was pointing, but he found a new situation. Xiong Jisher and the others were in trouble. He saw several young men in robes confronting them face to face. Xiong Jisher rolled up his sleeves, and his tanned face was red because of excitement. Xiong Xiaolin timidly hid behind Xiong Jisher, but she remembered Poplar Fruit's advice and protected her two younger brothers and sister under her arms. Poplar Fruit raised his eyebrows and said in his heart, "This is bad." He was not worried about Xiong Jisher. Although Xiong Jisher's martial arts were ordinary, it was only compared to masters like Poplar Fruit. For ordinary people, even if they used the simplest black tiger steel's heart, Xiong Jisher's strength was enough to make them suffer. Poplar Fruit was worried about Xiong Xiaolin and the other two behind him. No matter how good Xiong Jisher was, he was alone, and there were 4 people in front of him. If they shamelessly attacked the children, Xiong Jisher couldn't stop them. Boom! Poplar Fruit stepped on the road, and the Land Rover burst with a loud roaring sound, and attracted everyone's attention. Poplar Fruit parked the car by the roadside. At this time he parked the car, because she was to learn to unbuckle the seatbelt to learn to unbuckle the seat, because she was too excited to imitate her father. She was to learn to unbuckle to learn to uns Chi-Chi stay in the car. Dad, get them in the car. Poplar Fruit told Kiki, and then opened the door to get out of the car, and locked the doors and windows with the remote control. Guishan Province was a small, remote county. It was not like a big city like Yangcheng, so Poplar Fruit's beast-like Land Rover was definitely an eye-catching existence here. Poplar Fruit walked out of the car under everyone's surprised, envious, and even worshipful gazes. His height of 1.87 meters made him stand out among the crowd, and his chiseled face gave people the illusion that he was a celebrity. How could such a handsome and rich man appear in our county? Many people present couldn't help but have this question in their hearts. However, it seemed that someone was even more arrogant. The leader of the 4 people who had just confronted Poplar Fruit arrogantly turned around and walked towards him, cursing. "You motherfucker! You think you're so great just because you have a car? Come on, hit me to death." Yanghua frowned and raised her left hand to block the spittle that flew out of his mouth. At this time, Poplar Fruit felt that he had made a mistake in his judgment. Although the other party was dressed like a hooligan, with a shiny golden earring on his ear, he didn't seem to be an ordinary hooligan. This could be seen from the BMW car key that he deliberately showed on his waist. If he guessed correctly, the BMW parked across the road in front of him was his. When he walked in front of them, Poplar Fruit discovered that there were 5 people in front of him. One of them was sitting on the ground, holding his cheek and howling in pain. That Xiong Jisher didn't suffer any losses. He had already taken care of one of them. "Jisher, come here." "What happened?" Poplar Fruit stretched out his hand and pushed the BMW hooligan away, leaving a space for Xiong Jisher. Xiong Jisher hurriedly took Xiong Xiaolin and the other children to Poplar Fruit's side. He looked at Poplar Fruit with a guilty face and said, "Brother Yang, I didn't take good care of." Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by the BMW hooligan's angry voice. "Motherfucker, you want to leave after hitting people?" He spoke in the local dialect, which was slightly different from the Miao language of the Xiong family village. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had learned a lot of Miao language in the past 2 days, so he could understand it. You are falsely accusing people," Xiong Jisher said with a red face. "You started it first." "Jisher, what's going on?" Poplar Fruit asked in Mandarin. They picked Xiaolin. Xiong Jisher held back for a while, and finally found an alternative word for flirting. Poplar Fruit subconsciously glanced at Xiong Xiaolin, who was blushing. Although Xiong Xiaolin was very thin, and her growth was somewhat poor, she was still very beautiful. Moreover, her actual age was already 14 or 15 years old, and her every move was very mature, so in the eyes of those gangsters, she was still quite beautiful. She is really a femme fatale. Poplar Fruit thought in his heart. He didn't blame Xiong Xiaolin, but he wanted to complain about the experience of these beautiful girls. In the past, Duan Xueqing, now Zheng Yujia, Poplar Fruit often encountered similar things when he was with them. Hey, I don't know which mountain you are from. It is your blessing that Grandpa likes you. The BMW hoodlum proudly said. If you follow Grandpa, you'll be able to eat and drink well, wear gold and silver. Hearing Yanghua and the others speak Mandarin, the BMW hoodlum also changed to Mandarin and shouted. Although Miao language was spoken here, there were some subtle differences in every place, especially in the county and the mountains. Even the people in the county secretly called their Miao language official language, and those who didn't speak Miao language like official language would be treated differently. At this time, a lackey behind him came up and pulled his sleeve, whispering a few words to him. The BMW hooligan's face changed, and he subconsciously looked at Poplar Fruit's Land Rover, which had attracted a lot of attention. Although it was a BMW, his BMW was only a little more than 300,000 yuan. As long as one knew about cars, they would know that Poplar Fruit's car was far more valuable than his BMW. TSK, Grandpa fell in love with you at first sight, and thought that you were a pure and innocent girl. It turns out that you were also taken care of by the rich. The BMW hooligan spat on the ground with jealousy and said disdainfully. Chapter 569. The Miao girls gave people the impression that they were warm and generous. This could be seen from the fact that they were not shy about singing folk songs with the young men they loved on various festive occasions. However, this did not mean that they were very casual and open. On the contrary, the Miao girls were as conservative as mummies wrapped in silk cloth when it came to relationships. When they met the person they liked, they could love without any scruples. However, for them love was loyal and would only bloom once in their lives. Either they did not love at all, or they loved to death. Many of the Miao people's legends said that the love spell originated from their extreme views on love. Of course, with the progress of modernization, most of the Miao girls' views on love had gradually become more rational. However, for Xiong Xiaolin, who grew up in the mountains, she was still a very conservative girl. Hearing the malicious slander of the BMW gangster, Xiong Xiaolin's face turned very pale. She bit her lower lip, and tears began to appear in her beautiful eyes. Poplar Fruit was angry. He strode forward, grabbed the BMW gangster's collar, and said coldly, "Watch your mouth. I'll leave you some dignity." The BMW gangster was grabbed by Poplar Fruit like this, and he suddenly felt ashamed. He used both hands to grab Poplar Fruit's right fist, gritted his teeth, and tried to pry it open. However, the result was naturally like an ant trying to shake a tree. How could he break Poplar Fruit's strength? Like grabbing a child, he pulled the BMW gangster's heels off the ground. Only then did Poplar Fruit fiercely push him towards his companions behind him. As if they were picking up a rare treasure, the BMW gangster's lackeys quickly rushed up to support him. And for a moment, they huddled together. Looking at him with disdain, Poplar Fruit turned around and patted Xiong Jishir, who was still standing there with his fists clenched, and said, "Let's go ignore him." Walking to the front of the car, Poplar Fruit opened the door of the back seat and motioned for Xiong Xiaolin and the two children to get in first. Seeing Xiong Xiaolin's sister climb in, Kiki, who struggled to turn her little head, grinned happily and shouted happily, "Ada, sister." However, Xiong Xiaolin was in a terrible mood. She forced a smile and nodded at Kiki. "MD, you want to run away after hitting someone? Don't you know whose territory this is?" The BMW gangster rolled up from the ground, and the people who pushed him rushed up and surrounded Poplar Fruit's car. One of them even grabbed the back door to prevent Poplar Fruit from closing it. Poplar Fruit held back the anger in his heart. He stared into the eyes of the BMW gangster and coldly asked, "What do you want? What do you want? Hee, you hit me, and you're asking me what I want." The BMW hoodlum tilted his face, squinted at Poplar Fruit, spread out his hands, and asked like a madman. Did I hit you? Yang didn't open his car door. He turned around and rolled up his sleeves as he questioned Zhao Yu. Other than the BMW hoodlum who was looking at Poplar Fruit, no one else noticed that Poplar Fruit's eyes were actually emitting a fierce murderous aura. He learned this from Xiongkahu. Xiongkahu told him that in a close combat battle, courage was the key. Whoever retreated first would lose for sure. Therefore, every time Xiongkahu struck with his saber, he would use his murderous aura to disturb the enemy's mind. After experiencing a storm of blood, his eyes widened, and the pressure he gave off was not inferior to a tiger that dominated the forest. Poplar Fruit had only learned less than half of this. After all, his experience was not as rough as Xiongkahu's, and he was unable to gather enough murderous aura to make people tremble. However, even so, Poplar Fruit's eyes still made the BMW hoodlum feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. It was as if the tall man in front of him had turned into a terrifying monster. He was so scared that he backed off in panic, and even tripped over himself. There were a few sneers from the crowd, and this made the BMW hoodlum feel as if he had lost all his face. Motherfucker, what do I pay you for? The BMW hoodlum pushed away the lackeys who wanted to help him up, and scolded. You guys just want to see me make a fool of myself, right? There was a clever one who went back to the car and grabbed a baseball bat. He screamed as he rushed up from the side door, and swung the bat at Poplar Fruit's head. However, this idea of his was wrong. Who was Poplar Fruit? He did not need to look to feel the wind of the baseball bat. However, this speed was too slow. As he gradually got used to the meow that was as fast as lightning, Poplar Fruit was disdainful of the baseball bat that he saw from the corner of his eye. No one saw clearly that Poplar Fruit's right hand was like a snake coming out of a hole. He grabbed the baseball bat in the air, and then used a little bit of Tai Chi to remove the force on the baseball bat. Before Poplar Fruit could make a second move, Xiong Jisher, who had jumped out of the car, roared and kicked the guy who attacked him to the side. Just like that, the baseball bat had changed hands before anyone could react. Yang Guo was still unwilling to cause a dispute in this unfamiliar place. He grabbed the angry Xiong Jisher who wanted to go up and kick him a few more times and pulled him back. Poplar Fruit half held and half carried the baseball bat, and the bat was slanted towards the ground. He walked step by step towards the BMW hoodlum. What Yang Guo didn't expect was that the BMW thug was a little flustered at first, but later on, she didn't know if he didn't want to embarrass himself anymore, but he actually raised his head and arrogantly pressed forward. Come on, hit me. The BMW hoodlum's chest was pressed by Poplar Fruit's baseball bat, but he was not afraid at all. He shouted in a sharp voice. Try hitting me if you dare. He deserved a beating. However, although Poplar Fruit was very angry, he still held back. He was in the right before, but if he really hit him, he would be the one hitting others. Seeing that Poplar Fruit did not move, the BMW hoodlum became more and more arrogant. He shouted, Come on. What? You don't dare? The BMW hoodlum was addicted to it. He pointed his finger at Poplar Fruit's head and poked it in the air, as if he was really bullying him. Come on. Try it. At this moment, he suddenly pushed the baseball bat away and came over. He lowered his voice and laughed. Do you know who my father is? Let me tell you, if you touch me, you won't be able to walk out of Lidong. Poplar Fruit frowned and pushed the BMW hoodlum's head away. Looking at the shameless face with powder and the strong smell of perfume, Poplar Fruit felt disgusted. A sharp scream suddenly resounded throughout the entire square. Under the gaze of Poplar Fruit and the onlookers, the BMW hoodlum wailed. It seemed that Poplar Fruit had used a lot of strength. He slowly fell to the ground, and then rolled a few times exaggeratedly. Call the police, call the police. You hit me. Chapter 570. If it wasn't for the national football team, this was probably the worst dive in history. Poplar Fruit was stunned. For a moment he even doubted his own strength. If he could do this with a gentle push, he would have been able to shake the earth. However, the BMW gangster's words made Poplar Fruit vigilant. Call the police? Although the BMW gangster's lackeys were timid, they didn't dare to step forward when they saw Poplar Fruit and Xiong Jisher, who were so strong. However, they were good at intimidating others. One of them took out his mobile phone, dialed a number, and jokingly pointed at Poplar Fruit and said, "You're dead." A strong dragon couldn't beat a local snake. Poplar Fruit felt a little uneasy. He remembered what the BMW gangster had just said. "Do you know who my father is?" This kind of sentence was usually followed by something like, "My father is Li Gang." However, before he could say it, he was pushed away by Poplar Fruit. Xiong Jisher had never seen such a situation. When he heard that the other party was going to call the police, he panicked and rushed forward to grab the man's mobile phone. Hey, the other gangsters didn't just stand there and watch. They surrounded Xiong Jisher and separated him, preventing him from contacting the person who was making the call. Sharp Hmong language curses came one after another. Poplar Fruit was afraid that Xiong Jisher would be at a disadvantage, so he pulled him back. It was obviously a false accusation, but the other party had a "you're dead" attitude, which made Poplar Fruit's eyelids twitch. He was almost sure that the other party must have a lot of connections in the local area. The car couldn't leave. It was blocked by the other party's people. Poplar Fruit couldn't sit still. He frowned, pushed Xiong Jisher into the car, and then took out his mobile phone to make a call. In this small county town, Poplar Fruit only knew Meng Ping. Although he felt that Meng Ping was very unreliable, he could only give him a phone number. After the call went through, Poplar Fruit briefly told Meng Ping what had happened. In the end, before he was arrested by the police, he was questioned by Meng Ping for a few minutes. Finally, after Poplar Fruit repeatedly assured him that they were not doing anything illegal, Meng Ping put down the phone and rushed over. However, when Meng Ping arrived, he could only go to the Public Security Bureau to find someone. It turned out that the BMW gangster was the son of the county's third-in-command, the executive deputy county magistrate. Moreover, because his father was a local official, he had been quietly operating for decades. His prestige was not below that of the first and second-in-command. The police came quickly after receiving the call. What made Poplar Fruit angry was that they didn't even ask what was going on. They just wanted to arrest him. Could it be that their family owns the Public Security Bureau? When Poplar Fruit saw that the leading police officer had his arm around the other party's shoulder, he clenched his fist. It wasn't the first time he had seen this scene. Previously, when he was framed and imprisoned by Duan Xueqing's perverted leader, Gu Shida, he had encountered the same situation. There was a group of children in the car behind him. Poplar Fruit couldn't retreat, so he confronted the other party for a long time. Poplar Fruit's strength was too great. Even though Poplar Fruit didn't make a move, the few of them couldn't handle Poplar Fruit alone. In the end, in order not to make the situation worse, the police took a step back and let Poplar Fruit drive the car to the Public Security Bureau. Meng Ping hurried to the Public Security Bureau. Poplar Fruit was still at the entrance of the Public Security Bureau, glaring angrily at the BMW gangster. Behind him, Xiong Xiaolin and several frightened children were tightly pulling Poplar Fruit's clothes. Just now, for some reason, the BMW thugs suddenly went crazy. They actually shamelessly wanted to go around Yang Guo to flirt with Xiong Xiaolin. This made Yang Guo's anger level instantly explode. Poplar Fruit grabbed the BMW gangster's shoulder with one hand and pushed him hard. This time, the BMW gangster didn't need to pretend. He was directly pushed to the ground by Poplar Fruit. Moreover, his buttocks hit the ground first. He covered his buttocks in pain and wailed. The corners of the eyes of the policemen behind them twitched. They didn't dare to laugh, but they couldn't help it. Xiong Jisher didn't have the strength of Poplar Fruit. He had already been pressed down by the police and handcuffed to the chair. However, he didn't give in and glared at the other party. His eyes were about to spit fire. In fact, the policemen were also having a headache. Although they supported the BMW gangster because of his background, they really didn't dare to do anything to Poplar Fruit. They could only surround him and persuade him not to do anything. What made them hesitate was Poplar Fruit's Land Rover. In the economically backward Guishan province, people with power might not necessarily be rich, but rich people must be very powerful. The Land Rover driven by Poplar Fruit was several times more expensive than the BMW gangster's low-spec BMW. Who knew if Poplar Fruit was pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger? No matter what, the policeman secretly muttered, "We can't offend him too much." We should leave him a way out so that we can meet again in the future. After Meng Ping arrived, he saw the situation between Poplar Fruit and the police. He panicked and rushed over. He even deliberately scolded Poplar Fruit and apologized on his behalf. Poplar Fruit was angry. He pulled Meng Ping and said, "Why are you apologizing? Can't you figure out the situation? Is this our fault?" It had to be said that although Meng Ping was stubborn like a piece of wood, he was still worthy of praise in some aspects. After carefully understanding the ins and outs of the matter, Meng Ping became angry. He used to be a teacher. Facing the BMW gangster who harassed my daughter, he righteously said to the policeman, "How are you, policeman? The person who should be arrested is obviously him. As policeman, you don't enforce the law impartially. I will tell Bureau Chief Lu Guoyang to let you learn the discipline of the police force." "Who are you? Why are you so arrogant?" The BMW gangster sneered and asked. "Me. I am Meng Ping, the Deputy Bureau Chief of the Education Bureau." Meng Ping said proudly, "Of course, I used to be a glorious teacher of the people." Poplar Fruit wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. He was shocked by Meng Ping's self-introduction. If he could, he would rather not call this guy who felt so good about himself over. Ha! Ha! As if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. The BMW gangster held his stomach and squatted on the side, laughing crazily. "Are you fucking sent by monkeys to tease me? A small deputy bureau chief dares to speak so arrogantly? I don't use my power to oppress people. I use reason to convince people." Meng Ping righteously said, "You were wrong in this matter. Md. Since when was it your turn to teach me a lesson?" The BMW gangster suddenly rushed up and pushed Meng Ping to the ground. He pretended to vomit twice on the ground and cursed. "Do you know how annoying you are? If you have nothing to do, get out of my way. Do you know who my dad is? Stand firm. Let me tell you, my dad's name is Liang Shengtao." The BMW gangster laughed arrogantly. "A small deputy bureau chief like you can be fired at any time." Chapter 571. Although Yang Guo had a headache due to Meng Ping's childish words, seeing him being pushed down, Yang Guo still glared at the BMW gangster and stepped forward to help Meng Ping up. However, Meng Ping had no intention of backing down. After he stood up, he pulled away Poplar Fruit's hand and scolded, "Your father is a deputy county magistrate. Do you think you can do whatever you want? If a prince breaks the law, a commoner will be punished as well." Meng Ping stepped forward and said with his head held high, "If you make a mistake, you will be punished as well." His voice wasn't loud, but it was loud and clear like a bell. Moreover, his fearless strides carried the heroic aura of the rage of a gentleman causes blood to splatter everywhere. Finally, someone couldn't sit still in front of the Public Security Bureau. Lu Guoyang, who was mentioned by Meng Ping, hurriedly walked down from the office building. He saw the BMW gangster and blurted out, "Young Master Liang." However, Lu Guoyang was a cunning old fox. He didn't rush forward to deal with the dispute, but asked someone to clarify the situation. Actually, he didn't need to ask, as he knew that it was young Master Liang who was causing trouble. He asked because he wanted to know the background of the people who were confronting young Master Liang. After listening to his subordinate's explanation, Lu Guoyang frowned. This matter was really tricky. Poplar Fruit was so mysterious, and he was a foreigner driving an expensive Land Rover. No one knew where Poplar Fruit came from. Xiong Jisher, who was handcuffed to the chair, had his background figured out in half an hour. He was a local from a village, so he seemed easy to bully. However, when Lu Guoyang heard that Xiong Jisher was good at fighting, and that it took a few policemen to hold him down, his heart skipped a beat. He couldn't help but ask Xiong Jisher, "Little brother, which village are you from?" He spoke in Miao language to make Xiong Jisher lower his guard. Xiong Jisher's eyes were fixed on the outside, looking angry and unwilling. Hearing Lu Guoyang's question, he answered without hesitation, "Xiong family." As expected. Others might not know, but as the director of the Public Security Bureau of this small county, how could Lu Guoyang not know of Xiong Kehu's existence? Before Xiong Kehu joined the army, he was infamous in the area. When the soldiers came back, Their murderous look made several people pee their pants when they walked on the streets. 30 years ago, Xiongkahu's name could even stop children from crying at night. However, after Xiongkahu returned to the mountain, he rarely left the mountain, and his influence slowly faded. However, Lu Guoyang was not as ignorant as the masses. He had some cases of civil disputes that told him that even though Xiongkahu had returned to the garden and field residence, he was still the same god of death. At the end of the 80s, Xiongkahu rushed to the county government alone, and dragged the county magistrate to his village to seek justice for the Xiong village. In the mid-90s, there was a drought in Guishan province. Due to a dispute over a water source, the Xiong family got into a fight with 2 villages downstream. Xiongkahu led the Miao people and killed twice their number of Han Chinese farmers. During the dispute, both sides suffered casualties, but the Han Chinese lost the most. Many of them had their tendons severed by Xiongkahu. Although he did not kill them, severing their tendons meant that their hands were crippled. Even so, Xiongkahu was not arrested. On one hand, it was because the mountains were high and the rivers were far away, and the villagers were poor, so no one dared to arrest him. On the other hand, Xiongkahu's achievements in the army were too outstanding, and there were people who were careless about him. There were many cases of armed fights, but the Xiong village was never at a disadvantage. In the past 5 to 6 years, these cases almost never happened again. Moreover, the people of the Xiong village were more restrained and rarely caused trouble, so Lu Guoyang didn't think of Xiongkahu for a long time. However, Lu Guoyang still had a headache whenever he heard the name of the Xiong village. He didn't want to go up against that hot-tempered and protective old man. The last one was Meng Ping. Although Meng Ping was only a deputy director of the Education Bureau, his name was well known in the small county government. Putting it this way, Meng Ping was a weirdo in the bureaucracy. With his stubborn and easily offending personality, Meng Ping could only be a teacher until his death. But who told him to have a good father? Teacher Meng had been a teacher his whole life. He used to teach in the county, but later went to the mountains. Teacher Meng didn't dare say that he had students all over the world, but the students he taught could be found in every corner of Guishan province. One of them was a high-ranking official in the provincial capital of Guishan province. He especially remembered Teacher Meng's kindness, and helped Teacher Meng's family without sparing any effort. Meng Ping was promoted from a normal language teacher to a civil servant in the county's education bureau. Then he escorted Teacher Meng all the way until Teacher Meng passed away. That person came back to attend the memorial service, and asked the county to give Meng Ping a compensation. Thus, there was the current deputy director Meng Ping. Although Meng Ping was usually too straightforward and offended many leaders, no one was willing to touch him. In the end, they just turned a blind eye. Why are they together? Lu Guoyang looked at the tense situation outside and had a headache. Young Master Liang, Deputy Director Meng, Aya, why are you arguing? It's really like the flood rushing against the Dragon King's temple. We're all on the same side, calm down, calm down. Lu Guoyang didn't know how many rounds his thoughts, but he still pushed the door open and said with a smile. Who's on the same side with him? The BMW hoodlum said unhappily. Uncle Lu, you came? This guy even said that he wanted you to teach me a lesson. Also, these guys just hit me. Here, Captain Wu can help me testify. The BMW hoodlum pulled out a policeman with a bitter smile from the crowd and patted his shoulder. When Captain Wu heard Lu Guoyang's tone, he knew that his boss didn't want to help either side, and even wanted to make peace. Therefore, he secretly wanted to hide at the back, but he was still dragged out by young Master Liang without any explanation. Deputy Director Lu, hello. Meng Ping saluted him, neither servile nor overbearing. Then, in front of everyone, he started to criticize the policeman who had just left the team. Deputy Director Lu, I think that the police team needs to do some ideological work. Meng Ping said loudly. Your subordinates were actually ordered by a playboy. Not only did they mediate the dispute unreasonably, but they also inverted black and white, and framed good people. Lu Guoyang's eyebrows twitched, and his smile froze. Although he had heard about it before, this was the first time he experienced Meng Ping's straightforwardness, and he couldn't take it. If it weren't for the fact that he had too many scruples, Lu Guoyang would have immediately changed his position to deal with Poplar Fruit and the others. Poplar Fruit wasn't stupid. He knew that although Meng Ping's words were straightforward, he had undoubtedly offended the deputy director in front of him. He finally couldn't take it anymore and pulled Meng Ping aside. He softly advised, "Uncle Meng, stop talking." Chapter 572. Upholding Justice and Not Bending Over for Power. For the first time, Yang Guo actually had a trace of admiration for this short, balding man. Perhaps his words were shocking, or perhaps he didn't care about the consequences and only wanted to express his feelings, or perhaps he was really stupid and naive. But at this time, his back seemed to have become tall and lovable. However, Poplar Fruit couldn't let him continue speaking. Most of the time, telling the truth wasn't the best choice. Meng Ping's righteous lecture had pushed the matter to an irreversible abyss. The other party came to make peace, but you still scolded him? Seeing Poplar Fruit pull Meng Ping back, Lu Guoyang secretly wiped his sweat and said in his heart, "Thank the heavens, there's finally someone who is reasonable." However, just as this side was appeased, the other side was dissatisfied. That BMW hooligan called young Master Liang wasn't a kind person. He saw that Lu Guoyang was biased towards the other party, and the anger in his heart rose. "Uncle Liang, whose side are you on? Why are you helping an outsider?" Young Master Liang complained in the official Miao language of the county. He didn't dare to speak to Lu Guoyang as unscrupulously as he did to Meng Ping. In his eyes, Meng Ping was just a small civil servant that he could casually step on, while Lu Guoyang was his father's left and right arm. Even if he was his father's son, if Lu Guoyang complained to his father would definitely deal with him first. At this time, Lu Guoyang had a big headache. He thought to himself, "AI, what kind of weirdo am I encountering?" Liang Shengtao was the most shrewd person Lu Guoyang had ever met. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was a cunning old fox. The previous county magistrates had disagreements with Liang Shengtao, and they were all later stripped of their positions and sent away with their tails between their legs. However, his son wasn't like him at all. He was impatient, liked to cause trouble, and didn't know how to observe people's expressions. Lu Guoyang had given him several looks, but he didn't pay attention to it at all. The country was ruined by you, the children of officials. Officials protect each other and bully the common people. Ugh. Meng Ping was being held back by Poplar Fruit. When he heard young Master Liang's words, he immediately broke free from Poplar Fruit as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He rushed up and pointed at young Master Liang's nose as he angrily cursed. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit reacted quickly and rushed forward to cover Meng Ping's mouth. It was undeniable that what Meng Ping said was the truth. However, it was absolutely irrational to recklessly engage in a war of words with others when one's strength was not strong enough to face them head-on. Now was not the time to sing a sad song of indignation and sacrifice my blood in the name of the Yellow Emperor. After being framed and sent to prison, Poplar Fruit had learned a lot. In this small county, he didn't have any connections like he did in Yangcheng. If he was sent to prison because of his connections, then he would be a fish on the chopping block. Although Poplar Fruit was gnashing his teeth in anger, in order to protect Meng Ping and the children behind him, he had to endure it. After today, he would slowly settle the score. Lu Guoyang also thought the same. He saw that young Master Liang's eyes were spitting fire after being pointed at and scolded. He knew that things weren't good. He quickly moved his body and hugged young Master Liang, who was about to throw a punch. When the boss moved, the policemen from the Public Security Bureau also cleverly rushed up. A few of them pulled and hugged young Master Liang's lackeys who were about to rush over to fight. Calm down, calm down. Because of inertia, young Master Liang's fist landed on Lu Guoyang's shoulder blade. Lu Guoyang, who had been neglecting training for a long time, grimaced in pain. However, he didn't care about the pain as he hugged and pushed young Master Liang to the side. "Uncle Liang, why are you blocking me?" Young Master Liang was so angry that his face was distorted. He flew into a rage and roared, "Let go of me, I want to beat that grandson to death. He actually dared to scold me." Liang Huasheng. Lu Guoyang was finally angry. He lowered his voice and grabbed young Master Liang's shoulder. Lu Guoyang's frame was bigger than the short and thin young Master Liang. The way he grabbed young Master Liang was like an eagle grabbing a chick. Young Master Liang finally calmed down. His eyes flashed with a trace of fear, and then it turned into a look of dissatisfaction. Young Master Liang. Because Lu Guoyang was angry, he was panting heavily. However, he changed back to how he addressed young Master Liang. Can you listen to me? Uncle Liang, please speak. Young Master Liang didn't dare to anger someone that even his father thought highly of. He suppressed the unhappiness in his heart and gritted his teeth as he said angrily, "Do you know who the other party is?" Lu Guoyang turned around and hinted with his eyes. "Who is he? Isn't he just a small deputy director of the Education Bureau? My dad can kick him out of office anytime," young Master Liang said with disdain. "That's what you saw." Lu Guoyang sighed. He pulled young Master Liang's ear and whispered into his ear, "Do you know why I don't want you to have a conflict with Meng Ping?" After Lu Guoyang explained Meng Ping's background, he patted young Master Liang's shoulder and smiled. "It's not that we are afraid of Meng Ping. After his father died, he was nothing. However, we still have to consider the face of the person behind him. It's not like we have a deep grudge against him. We don't have to fight to the death with him." Young Master Liang said unwillingly, "Are we just going to let it go like this? I don't like that bastard." "Of course I won't just let it go." Lu Guoyang smiled and said, "Although we can't kill him, we can still trip him up in the future. I don't believe that those trivial matters will disturb the great god behind him." Although revenge could be taken slowly, young Master Liang was still very unhappy. He gritted his teeth and looked at Meng Ping, who deserved a beating. Then he pointed at Poplar Fruit and asked, "What about those people? Other than that Land Rover guy, Uncle Liang, you can't do anything to those bumpkins?" "I really can't do anything." Lu Guoyang thought of the terrifying old Meow Man and felt a headache coming on. He smiled bitterly and told young Master Liang about Xiong Kehu and the glorious deeds of the Xiong family. He even told young Master Liang about Xiong Kehu's lawless intrusion into the county government. What he meant was that if young Master Liang dared to touch the county government, he might be caught and sent to the Meow village to be tortured. Fuck. Why am I so unlucky today? Young Master Liang was so angry that he kicked the flower bed next to him and said, "Anyway, you mean that I deserve to be beaten up?" Young Master Liang, revenge is a dish best served cold. Lu Guoyang pulled young Master Liang and persuaded him, "Let's endure it today and not have a direct confrontation. After I investigate their background, I will find a way to vent your anger for you. I won't let any of them go." "Really?" Young Master Liang's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but look at the Meow woman, who was dressed simply, but had a graceful figure. He also looked at Poplar Fruit's giant beast, that looked very exciting. He drooled and said, "Uncle Liang, you have to help me get that little bitch in that car." Okay. Lu Guoyang wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and nodded in a perfunctory manner. He smiled bitterly in his heart. I haven't even said what I can do to them, but he's already thinking about other people's things. Chapter 573. Things went unexpectedly well. Poplar Fruit thought that no one would be able to leave today. Unexpectedly, after Lu Guoyang came out to deal with them, the BMW gangster also asked his men to drive away angrily. Xiong Jisher, who was handcuffed to the chair, was also released. In the end, things didn't get out of hand. In the evening, Poplar Fruit and the others couldn't go back to the mountain because it was already dark. They had to stay at Meng Ping's place for the night. In the car on the way to dinner, Poplar Fruit felt a little strange. Was this matter really solved so smoothly? However, Poplar Fruit didn't feel at ease. He felt that things were far from over. No matter what Poplar Fruit thought, the simple-minded children couldn't hold back their excitement and discussed loudly in the car. He is a big bad guy. Big bad guys are all big bad wolves. This childish voice naturally belonged to Kiki. She tried her best to turn her head and participate in the children's discussion. When I grow up, I want to be like Grandpa and beat the big bad guy to death. What made people speechless was that the child who said that was actually the little girl from the Hmong village who was less than 10 years old and was in Xiong Xiaolin's arms. She held her head high and looked so heroic that the little boy from the Hmong village who was even younger looked up at her with admiration. Kiki also wants to beat the bad guy. Kiki waved her small fist and shouted without showing any weakness. Do you know what kind of person is a bad guy? You still say you want to beat the bad guy? Poplar Fruit laughed and teased her while driving. Kiki knows. Kiki turned her head and looked at her father with her big innocent eyes. She said seriously, Kiki saw it. That bad guy beat Uncle Fierce Baba. Who is Uncle Xiong Baba? The little boy from the Hmong village behind them asked with a confused look. It's Uncle Fierce Baba. Kiki loudly corrected him. In her impression, the one-track-minded Mengping was very fierce. When he argued with her father, his eyes looked like he wanted to eat people. Poplar Fruit was convulsing with laughter. Fortunately, Mengping drove his car over, so he didn't hear it. However, Poplar Fruit still stretched his right hand out to pinch Kiki's nose and smiled. Young Luochi, you're not allowed to give others nicknames. No. My daughter, the most powerful and domineering Miao village girl in the back seat, suddenly became very serious. She sat in Sister Xiong Xiaolin's arms and poked her head out from the armrest. She asked in confusion, did that bad guy bully Sister Xiaolin? No. Kiki didn't see it from the front, so she waved her hand and explained seriously, Sister Xiaolin is standing behind Papa. The bad guy pushed Uncle Fierce Baba. Hey Kiki. Poplar Fruit warned, but he couldn't help but laugh. Yes, the bad guy bullied Sister Xiaolin. My daughter said stubbornly. Yes, I also saw him bully Sister Xiaolin. The little boy from Miao village was pushed into Xiong Jisher's arms by my daughter, but he still said weakly. This was strange. Kiki shook her head and looked in front of her in confusion. She thought for a long time, but she didn't see the bad guy touch Sister Xiaolin. Okay, stop quarreling. We're here, get ready to get off. Yang Gua saw that Mengping's car, who was leading the way, had its turn signal on. Then he turned into a nearby restaurant and followed. Brother Yang, I'm sorry. After getting off the car, Xiong Jisher finally found some time. He walked to Poplar Fruit, who was unfastening Kiki's seatbelt, and said embarrassedly, Why are you apologizing to me? Poplar Fruit looked back at him strangely and asked, It's all my fault, I hit him impulsively. Xiong Jisher's face was full of guilt, and he said in a low voice, I've brought trouble to everyone. Jisher. Poplar Fruit picked up Kiki, put one hand on the car door, looked at Xiong Jisher's eyes seriously and said, It's not your turn to apologize. You've done the right thing in this matter. But if I didn't hit him, we wouldn't have been taken to the Public Security Bureau. Xiong Jisher was still upset, and he said with his head lowered, It's not your fault. Poplar Fruit laughed, bang. He closed the car door and said loudly, Not to mention you, if I was there, I would have made the same choice as you. Hit him first. At this point, Yang Guo was prepared to explode with a string of curses. Fuck, let's talk after we fight. However, he swallowed the two words that were about to come out of his mouth, because he remembered that Kiki was still in his arms. Papa hit the bad guy. Kiki waved her little fist and said cheerfully, Poplar Fruit was right. If he was there, he would have beaten that pervert. Tolerance meant that he didn't want to haggle over every detail, but it didn't mean that he had to swallow his anger when the other party bullied him. After this afternoon's farce, the distance between Poplar Fruit and Mengping was much closer. Even Kiki began to feel that Uncle Fierce, in fact at Mengping's age, Kiki could even call him Grandpa, was a little bit affectionate. However, affectionate didn't mean eager. Tonight's dinner atmosphere was very strange. Mengping was still brooding over that matter. With his character, he wouldn't be able to eat if he didn't say a few words. Therefore, this dinner almost became Mengping's personal talk show. He had been chattering nonstop to spread his upright outlook on the world and life to everyone. Xiong Jisher was relatively silent. He had been eating with his head down, while the other children were sitting on the other side. They were not interested in these topics at all. They were all chattering about their own little world. Therefore, the difficult task of accompanying Mengping fell on Yang Guo's shoulders. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he smiled stiffly. His head was also a little dizzy after being bombarded by Mengping. He felt as if he had just escaped from heaven for less than 2 hours, and then fell back into hell. After dinner, Poplar Fruit and Mengping fought to pay the bill. In terms of money, Mengping definitely couldn't compare to Poplar Fruit. Moreover, Poplar Fruit had a legitimate reason to pay for this meal. "Uncle Meng, I'll have to trouble you to come out and help today. This meal should be my treat." However, Mengping held on to the bill, as if he wouldn't give up. He pushed Poplar Fruit away and said angrily, "Get out of my way. What treat? If you have money, keep it for the children to go to school." Naturally, he wasn't referring to Kiki when he said to go to school. However, Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw Mengping's angry look. He really didn't understand why he was so serious about paying the bill. In the end, Poplar Fruit let go. Chapter 574. After returning to the mountain the next day, Xiong Kehu heard about the incident from Xiong Jisher. Later, he called Poplar Fruit over to ask about the situation. Then there was nothing else. Not only did Xiong Kehu not make any comments, but he also did not punish Xiong Jisher. It was as if the incident had not happened at all. However, it was said that after the old man went back, he set up a whetstone and took the Miaodao in his house and rubbed it one by one. It was like the steps of the devil. Cough. It seemed that something had intruded. The two children from the Hmong village who came back from the county became popular all of a sudden. Their mothers had been waiting for their children to come back. However, before they could give them a hug in surprise, the two children were surrounded by a mighty army of children. Under the envious gaze of a group of peers, the two children held their heads high proudly and excitedly talked about what they had seen and heard in the city. Although their narration was not structured, it was this kind of story that kept jumping around that attracted the attention of the other children. Big cars, LED displays that were bigger than their stilt house, and fragrant snacks on the street. These were just common things in Poplar Fruit's eyes. However, after the two children talked about them one after another, they built a wonderful world in the minds of the children from the Hmong village, which was not inferior to the Candy City. When Poplar Fruit continued to tell stories and teach the children, their enthusiasm in answering questions surprised Poplar Fruit. However, these were the effects of the follow-up, so they would not be repeated here. After returning to the mountain, Poplar Fruit's life returned to peace again. He enjoyed the joy of being a teacher in the army of children, and quietly prepared and waited at the edge of the mortal world. Now he was waiting for Zheng Yujia's batch of equipment and the technical director of Poplar Fruit, Fat Dragon, to come. However, in the world outside the mountain, the undercurrents continued to surge. Duan Xueqing's side was relatively peaceful for the time being. She still lived in her own world, reading books, studying, and being a quiet beauty. The only change was that there was one more person in her world. A man who would only occasionally appear in the morning to drink tea and sit quietly with her. Liang Huaxing, the BMW gangster, had lost his face in the Public Security Bureau. After returning, he did not let it go at all. With his narrow-mindedness, he called Lu Guoyang early the next morning and urged the County Public Security Bureau director to help him vent his anger. Lu Guoyang, who originally thought that he could fool him, had no choice but to ask his men to investigate Poplar Fruit. The Miao people in the Xiong village were like a barrel of gunpowder. If they were provoked, they would explode at any time. When that time came, that old bastard would come with a knife. No matter who suffered first, Lu Guoyang as the director of the Public Security Army would not be able to bear the consequences. Mengping's background was too complicated. Furthermore, this fellow was an unreasonable person who could not be reasoned with. Unless they fought to the death with him, there was no way they could deal with him. However, Lu Guoyang wasn't that stupid to gamble his future with a nobody for a small matter. So, it seemed that Poplar Fruit was the only possible breakthrough. Although Poplar Fruit's Land Rover was intimidating, Lu Guoyang saw the Poplar Fruit's license plate. It was a car from Guangdong Province. There were too many rich people in Guangdong Province. Unlike the poor Litong County, ordinary people there could still afford to buy luxury cars. So Lu Guoyang planned to ask someone to check Poplar Fruit's license plate. If he was not too fierce, he could still be bullied in Litong County. But he did not know that if he did not check, trouble would come. Lu Guoyang handed the license plate number to his secretary. That's right, not the secretary's secretary. A policewoman from the logistics department was going to check it out. Lu Guoyang felt that it was better to let his own people handle this kind of thing. Moreover, he could also take this opportunity to pat her perky and round butt. Looking at his sweetheart rolling her eyes at him and leaving, Lu Guoyang felt his heart itch. He muttered to himself, "Motherfucker. I haven't played for a few days and she's already so slutty. I have to get a room tonight." Lu Guoyang thought that his sweetheart could handle this kind of small matter well, but he underestimated the IQ of his sweetheart. Through the Public Security Bureau's internal network, it was easy to find the information about Poplar Fruit's license plate. At the same time, the case of Poplar Fruit's capture of the child trafficking gang also popped up. Of course, considering the reputation of the Guangdong province's police, as well as He Wenjua's intention to cover it up, Poplar Fruit was only a minor victim in the case file. He appeared twice more than the others. If Lu Guoyang saw this case, he would wonder if there was any inside story behind it. Unfortunately, the person who was investigating this was his sweetheart. Her focus was not on Poplar Fruit at all. Seeing this case, a woman's desire to gossip took over. In order to have more things to talk about when chatting with her friends, she picked up the phone and called the Guangdong Province Police. Using the excuse of an investigation to inquire about some personal matters was also a common thing in the public security system. Little Me had done this many times before. But today, she used the name of Poplar Fruit, and the Guangdong Province Police on the other side of the phone happened to be the police who handled the case file. When the Guangdong Province Police heard that his sweetheart was investigating Poplar Fruit, he immediately paid attention. He remembered that when the director came over to ask about the case, he specifically mentioned Poplar Fruit's name and asked them to handle it in a low-key manner. Although he didn't know the relationship between Poplar Fruit and the director, he could see that there was a connection between the two. Therefore, the Guangdong Province Police chatted with the soft-voiced policewoman on the other side of the phone about the interesting parts of the case. At the same time, he was also quietly trying to get information from her. She was really a big-boobed, brainless woman. When his sweetheart was talking about it, she suddenly told him about the conflict between Poplar Fruit and the county magistrate's son yesterday. Later, the Guangdong Province Police naturally didn't dare to neglect, and quickly reported to the leader. However, after reporting to the leader, the director finally got the news, and then he had to contact He Wenjua, who often turned off his phone. It took a lot of time in between. Therefore, this was something that happened later. Let's stop here. In the end, his sweetheart didn't remember Poplar Fruit until it was almost time to get off work. She hurriedly reported to Lu Guoyang. "I a farmer." After he studied, he transferred his household registration to the city. At first glance, you can tell that he is not related. However, Lu Guoyang didn't know that this was just Poplar Fruit's background on the surface. Now, Poplar Fruit was no longer an ignorant person. Because of his lover's stupidity, Lu Guoyang, who had always been cautious, was destined to fall into Poplar Fruit's trap. Chapter 575. In the remote Hmong village, it was difficult to find any traces of modern technology other than the computer and mobile phone at hand. Poplar Fruit had been living there for a few days. If it was not for his interest in learning the double-handed Miaodao and his determination to do something good, he would have left Poplar Fruit a long time ago. Poplar Fruit was not the only one. Even Goldie was a little listless when it came to the mountain. In the beginning, it went out to play with Chi-Chi, and ended up being bullied by the big dogs in the Hmong stockade village. Although this guy looked bigger than an ordinary Chinese rural dog, its actual age was obvious. Its strength was completely overshadowed by a few ugly big dogs. After a few pieces of its fur were bitten off, it was unwilling to go out anymore. Even if it went out, it would stick close to Poplar Fruit. Kiki was the happiest. Every day when she came back, she would tell her father about her experience that day. She chattered like a happy lark. She felt that it was too fun here. There were so many children accompanying her. There were many children in Guangzhou too. However, the tall buildings that were like a forest of steel and concrete, the tightly shut security doors, and the people's hearts could not provide a chance and space for children to chase and play together happily. Poplar Fruit had thought of sending Kiki to a kindergarten that was similar to a toddler class. He did not want her to stay at home and not have any contact with the outside world. However, after coming to the Hmong village that was like going back a few decades, Kiki had the best opportunity to learn how to communicate with people. The children in the Hmong village were free-range. Almost all of their fathers went to the city to work. Their mothers were busy with housework and some farm work. They did not have time to take care of them. Unlike Kiki, who was pampered by her father since she was young. It was common to see some 2- or 3-year-old children running around outside barefoot without wearing pants. It was also common to see some children falling on the ground and scraping their knees. However, they still did not cry or scream. They patted their clothes and got up on their own. These were things that the parents and children in the city could not do. After a few days of training, Kiki's courage had increased. In the past, Kiki was shy and didn't dare to open her mouth when facing strange children. Now she could take the initiative to greet others. Not only that, today, Poplar Fruit was drinking meow tea with Xiong Jiwu in the lobby, while talking about Xiong Xiaolin going to the junior high school in the county next semester. Then he saw Kiki running in, and behind her were 2 children who were less than 5 years old. Papa. 5th uncle. Seeing Poplar Fruit and the others sitting in the hall, Kiki obediently bowed and greeted them. This was Poplar Fruit's request. Kiki was growing up, and Poplar Fruit felt that it was time to teach her some etiquette. She couldn't sneak out to play without saying a word like last time. "Why are your pants so dirty?" Poplar Fruit waved his daughter over and asked while rubbing her little head with a smile. Then he helped her tie her double ponytails again. Dirty. Kiki looked down nervously and saw some mud splashed on the legs of her small jeans. The little girl was so cute that she cried out and squatted down to wipe it with her chubby little hands, but she couldn't wipe it off. Okay, go play. Papa will help you wash it at night." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted her little butt. Kiki came back with her friends to play. Poplar Fruit knew what she was going to do. She was going to show off her toys. Poplar Fruit put a few of Kiki's toys in the suitcase, because he was worried that she would be bored on the mountain. As a result, she didn't touch those toys after she went up the mountain. There were too many new things in the Hmong village that her eyes couldn't take in. However, to the children in the mountains, Chi-Chi's toys were mystical items that they longed for but could not see. It was as if they were really magical. There were toy cars that could sing, unicorn dolls that could glow, and so on. They were simply too fascinating. Yesterday, Poplar Fruit found that Kiki had traded one of her toys. It wasn't really a trade. Kiki gave it to a child. Then the child ran home and brought a small hat made of flowers and rattan for Kiki. In terms of value, Poplar Fruit spent 500 yuan to buy the toy. It was a loss to exchange it for a small hat. However, Poplar Fruit didn't blame Kiki. Instead, he praised her for being kind and knowing how to share. Sometimes, money couldn't buy happiness. How could it not be worth exchanging a toy for 500 yuan for a beautiful hat that made Kiki happy for several days? After chatting with Xiong Jiwu for a while, Poplar Fruit found that the little guys didn't move. He was still a little worried, so he got up and went upstairs to take a look. Just as he went up the stairs, before he reached the window of his room, Poplar Fruit heard Wang Dachui's classic dialogue. "I never thought that I would still." So he was watching a video on the computer. Poplar Fruit suddenly understood. He didn't say anything but tiptoed to the door and peeked out. 3 pairs of feet came into view. One pair was white and tender, which obviously belonged to Kiki. On both sides of her, there was a pair of slightly dark feet. These little fellows actually ran to the bed to play. Poplar Fruit had a headache because the little guy's feet were dirty. Except for Kiki, the other children didn't wear shoes, so the mud stuck to the soles of their feet fell on the bed. "It's okay. It's a wooden bed. I'll wipe it later." Poplar Fruit had to comfort himself. "Kiki, what are they talking about?" Although the wonderful performance of Baiku and the others on the computer made the little guys laugh, for the children of Hmong village who were less than 5 years old, Mandarin was still a little difficult to understand. It was as if they were watching a mime show. They laughed and laughed, but still asked Kiki to translate. To Poplar Fruit's surprise, Kiki acted as a translator. Of course, the level of the little translator was not good enough. She couldn't keep up with the rhythm of Baiku's words in the video. She often missed 3 or 4 sentences when she translated a sentence. Aya, stop making noise. Kiki called out in a childish voice. I'm going to appear. Hearing what she said, the little friends quieted down. They stared with their eyes wide open, as if they were going to gouge out the eyes of the character in the computer. Poplar Fruit grinned. He now understood that the main purpose of Kiki letting the little friends watch the video was to let them see her appear on screen. Look, look! Kiki suddenly pointed at the computer and shouted happily. However, the time that Kiki appeared in the video was too short. There were only 2 or 3 seconds left after the editing. Before they could watch it, the image flashed by. Rewind, rewind. Kiki wiggled her little butt as she got up. She sat in front of the computer and pressed the left rewind button to rewind the video. This time, everyone could see clearly that Chi-Chi's appearance with her 2 spiky hairpins and the universe bracelet was just too adorable. Although he had seen it countless times, Poplar Fruit could not help but move closer. Feeling that there was someone behind her, Kiki subconsciously turned her head to look. Woo! Kiki cried out shyly as she was showing off that she was discovered. She jumped from the bed into her father's arms and dove into his arms like an ostrich. Chapter 576. Phew phew. It's not easy. Poplar Fruit gently put down the somewhat exaggerated meowdow in his hand, patted some of the wood shavings scattered on the ground, shook his head and sighed. Finally, it was a success. Looking at the wood carving in his hand, although it was only a semi-finished product, and there were still some slightly prickly wood stubble at the corners, it did not prevent Poplar Fruit from appreciating it with an artistic eye. It was really not easy. Poplar Fruit did not know that he had spent so much effort to successfully carve a seemingly simple wood carving. If he counted, it took Poplar Fruit 6 days. Yesterday, Poplar Fruit was so anxious that he stayed up until midnight. How could he not be anxious? It was Zheng Yujia's birthday in 2 or 3 days. Poplar Fruit had to send it to Zheng Yujia today, or she would not receive it on her birthday. He had to polish it quickly. Poplar Fruit took out 2 pieces of sandpaper, one thick and one thin, and sat back on the small stool, rubbing his masterpiece against the slightly slanting morning sun. At this time, Kiki ran back to ask her father for water. The little girl held the milk bottle and drank water, and then her eyes were still looking at the movements of her father's hands. This made Poplar Fruit's hands, which were constantly rubbing, shake. He thought to himself, oh no, Kiki won't take a fancy to it again, will she? Kiki had asked for his first work and the next several works. Poplar Fruit also found that the little girl secretly hid under the bed. It seemed to be very hidden, and was reluctant to show it to other friends. This time, Poplar Fruit's work was several grades better than the previous ones, Poplar Fruit believed. If Kiki took a fancy to it and stuck to it like a sticky candy, Poplar Fruit would not be able to snatch it from Kiki's hands. What about Zheng Yujia's birthday present? Papa. Kiki's clear and melodious voice sounded sweetly. Poplar Fruit could guess what she was going to say. Is it for Kiki? It's so cute. No, it's not for Kiki. Poplar Fruit quickly denied. Why? Why not for Kiki? Kiki looked up at her father pitifully, and her big watery eyes seemed to be able to speak. Did Kiki do something wrong? This is for your Aunt Zheng Yujia's gift. You've already taken several. Can you give one to Aunt Zheng Yujia? Poplar Fruit forced himself to persuade her. He had to be very careful with his words, otherwise Kiki would cry in front of him. Kiki pouted. She seemed to be struggling in her heart. After a while, under her father's perturbed expression, she finally nodded and said regretfully, well, I'll give this to Aunt. Really? Poplar Fruit himself could not believe his ears. It was not until he saw Kiki's affirmative eyes that Poplar Fruit was sure that Kiki was reluctantly willing to part with her treasure. Although she was very reluctant, Kiki still gave up the wood carving. There were many reasons for this. For example, Kiki did have a lot of collections. However, the most important reason was that Zheng Yujia still had a high position in her heart. That auntie who had bought her a lot of toys that she liked. Chi-Chi would not snatch her present. Kiki, who was drinking water at the side, leaned her soft little body into her father's arms. While watching her father polish the wood carving, she asked curiously, "Papa, is Aunt coming?" "No, she's in the capital. Why would she come?" "Later. Papa will go down the mountain and send it to her." Poplar Fruit answered casually. "Speak of the devil." Poplar Fruit's mobile phone on the chair to the side suddenly rang. Poplar Fruit's Thumbelina, Kiki, immediately ran over happily to help her father get it. It was Zheng Yujie calling. "Poplar Fruit. The delivery driver has arrived at the foot of the mountain. Hurry up and pick him up." As soon as the call was connected, Zheng Yujie's happy voice came from the receiver. "He's here? Why didn't he call me directly?" Poplar Fruit felt that it was troublesome to transfer to Zheng Yujie in the capital, and it could easily lead to communication misunderstandings. "Oh, it doesn't matter. The driver found the convenience store according to the location map you gave him, so you can come down and pick him up directly," Zheng Yujie said with a smile. Poplar Fruit could hear some noise on her side. It seemed that she was on the street. "Are you shopping?" Poplar Fruit asked casually, and then said, "Okay, I understand. I'll go down the mountain now. Ask the driver to wait for an hour. I'll be there soon." After putting down the phone, Kiki, who was next to him, became excited. She grabbed her father's arm and asked, "Is Aunt coming?" Kiki misses Aunt so much. However, Kiki was destined to be disappointed. Poplar Fruit rubbed Kiki's little head and said, "Aunt didn't come. She just asked someone to send some things to Dad. Aunt is very busy now. She's still in the capital." However, Kiki still didn't believe it. Under her insistence, Poplar Fruit had to take her down the mountain. Because they had to move things, Poplar Fruit ran to Xiongkahu and asked a few young men in the village to go down the mountain with him. Jisher. Poplar Fruit held Kiki in his arms and carried a small school bag, which contained the almost polished wood carving. While walking on the mountain road, he said to Xiong Jisher, "You and the others move the computer and other things up the mountain first. I have to drive to the city to mail something." After getting along with each other for a period of time, Poplar Fruit was very assured of the honest Xiong Jisher. Because he had to mail something, he couldn't go back to the mountain directly, so he planned to let Xiong Jisher take full responsibility. "Ah, I'm afraid that we don't know anything and will break the computer." Xiong Jisher suddenly became nervous. He had seen Yang Guo's MacBook. That exquisite high-tech product looked expensive no matter how he looked at it. "It's okay. Be careful. Don't drop it." Poplar Fruit comforted him. "After you take it back, put it in the school first. I'll deal with it when I come back in the afternoon." "Okay." As if he had taken on a more difficult task than blowing up a fort, Xiong Jisher's whole face was tense. He clenched his fists and trembled slightly. "Don't be nervous." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "It's not very expensive goods. Don't put too much pressure on yourself." Along the way, Poplar Fruit comforted Xiong Jisher several times. Only then did he relax a little. Anyway, Poplar Fruit and the others talked, and more than an hour of mountain road was over in the blink of an eye. After turning a bend in the mountain road, they could see the snack shop at the foot of the mountain. From afar, Poplar Fruit glanced at a woman standing beside a van. She was graceful and valiant. Her long hair fluttered in the mountain wind. For a moment, she attracted the attention of many men. Chapter 577. He slammed on the brakes, and the young men of Xiong village behind him almost crashed into each other. However, Poplar Fruit didn't pay attention to the people behind him who were in a mess. He was already in a mess in the wind. "Papa, you're lying. Auntie is here." Kiki's eyesight was as good as her father's. She also saw the woman standing outside and talking on the phone from a distance. She looked familiar. Wasn't she Zheng Yujie? Kiki's high-pitched scream wasn't scattered by the mountain wind. Instead, it followed the path of the wind and clearly entered the ears of Zheng Yujie, who was 180 meters away. Zheng Yujie had been hiding it and wanted to give Poplar Fruit a surprise. However, she had only come out to answer a phone call for more than an hour, and she had even bumped into Poplar Fruit. When she heard Kiki's voice, She turned around and stomped her feet regretfully. However, her psychological endurance was very strong. Seeing that there was no need to hide it anymore, Zhang Yujie walked to Poplar Fruit openly. She walked to Poplar Fruit's side and reached out to pinch Poplar Fruit's waist. Hiss! Although Poplar Fruit had rough skin and thick flesh, he couldn't help but gasp when the soft flesh on his waist was attacked. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "Long time no see. We just met, and you gave me such a big gift?" Zhang Yujie stared at Poplar Fruit without showing any weakness and said in a very dissatisfied tone, "Who told you to make such an expression?" Zhang Yujie exaggerated the look of shock on Poplar Fruit's face just now, and then continued to blame. "Long time no see. Is this how you are? Do you dislike me so much?" "It was really an unexpected disaster," Poplar Fruit said with a wry smile. "When did I dislike you? That was a surprise, okay? I didn't expect that you would actually come. But you shouldn't be so scared that you can't speak." Because there was someone behind them that she didn't know, Zhang Yujie lowered her voice and whispered in Poplar Fruit's ear. "Don't tell me that you found a mistress in this barren mountain? Are you worried that I will find out?" With that, Zhang Yujie giggled and put her hand on Poplar Fruit's shoulder. She didn't really think so. It was just a joke. Of course, if they weren't so close, Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujie, they wouldn't make such a joke. Nonsense. Poplar Fruit looked at Zhang Yujie and scolded with a smile. Poplar Fruit didn't expect that Zhang Yujie would come over herself. He was actually quite embarrassed because he understood Zhang Yujie's feelings very well. Unfortunately, he already had someone in his heart, and they could only be friends. However, if Zhang Yujie suddenly came to Miao Village, it was very likely that their relationship would be dragged into ambiguity again. This was something that Poplar Fruit was very conflicted about. However, since she was here, Poplar Fruit wouldn't drive Zhang Yujie away. He could only secretly remind himself to keep a distance. However, Poplar Fruit didn't think that this distance could be maintained just because he wanted to. It was a good thing that Zhang Yujie came over. Poplar Fruit didn't have to go to the county to send her a gift. Therefore, Poplar Fruit deliberately hid his small school bag, and then carried the computer with the young men of Xiong Village who came with him. However, Poplar Fruit didn't expect that there was a little spy beside him. Walking on the mountain road, Kiki was held by Zhang Yujie. She talked with the ant about some interesting things that happened on the mountain. Then, like a little general who had made a meritorious service, she put her arms around Zhang Yujie's neck and said proudly, "Papa prepared a gift for you. Originally, it was Chi-Chi, but Chi-Chi gave it to Auntie Ah third voice. Kiki sold it. Because the mountain road was narrow, Poplar Fruit, who was walking behind them, trembled when he heard this. Sure enough, Zhang Yujie immediately turned around and looked at Poplar Fruit with her beautiful red phoenix eyes. "You have a gift." Zhang Yujie pretended to be cold, but she couldn't hide the joy in her heart. "Well, it's your birthday in a few days." Poplar Fruit saw that he couldn't hide it, so he simply said generously, "I prepared a gift for you. Dad made it himself." Kiki continued to reveal the big news. Zhang Yujie's mouth was almost raised to the sky, but she still deliberately pretended to be a queen and said domineeringly, "When we get there, I want to check the goods. I don't want those that don't look good." They continued to walk to the mountain village, and soon, they arrived at the suspension bridge. Although Xiong Jisher and the others were carrying several bundled boxes in their hands, crossing the bridge was like walking on flat ground. There was no problem at all. However, Zhang Yujie refused to leave here. Before she reached the edge of the suspension bridge, she saw the cliff in the distance and her legs turned to jelly. She hugged a hanging branch tightly and said weakly, "Poplar Fruit, I don't dare." He never thought that Zhang Yujie would have acrophobia, and such a big reaction. In this situation, Poplar Fruit naturally couldn't force her to cross the bridge, especially when Kiki had to take care of her. Leaving Zhang Yujie where she was, Poplar Fruit first sent the things and Kiki to the opposite mountain peak in 2 batches. For this, Poplar Fruit spent a while comforting Kiki. "You and Uncle Jisher wait here for Dad. Dad will meet you when he brings Auntie here." After returning to the original mountain peak, Poplar Fruit walked to Zhang Yujie's side and looked at her with a smile. Zhang Yujie saw that he was watching the fun, and her heart was indescribably angry. With Poplar Fruit's help, she stood up unsteadily and shouted, "Ah! Are you gloating?" She reached out to pinch Poplar Fruit again, but her body was too weak to exert any strength. "Stop fooling around, let's go over." Poplar Fruit held back his laughter and helped Zheng Yujie slowly walk to the edge of the suspension bridge. "Hey, wait a minute, wait a minute." Before they set foot on the suspension bridge, Poplar Fruit's arm was tightly hugged. Zheng Yujie's whole body hung on Poplar Fruit's arm like a koala bear. The soft and fragrant touch almost made Poplar Fruit mess up again. "My legs are weak, I can't walk." Zheng Yujie hugged Poplar Fruit's arm and sat on the ground limply. She weakly looked at Poplar Fruit and said pitifully, "How rare." Zheng Yujie, who had always been calm in the face of a landslide, actually had something that she was afraid of. Poplar Fruit found it funny and felt a sense of pity. He squatted down and looked at Zheng Yujie's eyes. Zheng Yujie blinked her eyes, as if she was begging. Her fresh and soft lips looked exceptionally seductive. But this couldn't go on. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "I'll carry you over, close your eyes and don't look." This was also a way. Although there would be another intimate contact, in order to let Zheng Yujie, who was afraid of heights, cross this natural chasm. Poplar Fruit could only let Zheng Yujie climb up. Still very afraid, Zheng Yujie was like an octopus that hugged Poplar Fruit's neck and clamped onto Poplar Fruit's waist. She climbed onto his back and closed her eyes. Zheng Yujie could only rely on her other senses. However, even though she couldn't see, Poplar Fruit's broad back and the manly scent that was emitted from his sweat gave her the most reliable sense of security in the world. Chapter 578. Summer clothes were short and thin. It could be said that the two of them, N-words omitted, were almost, N-words omitted. Poplar Fruit could feel Zheng Yujie, N-words omitted. What's worse, Zheng Yujie's head, N-words omitted. 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 Although Poplar Fruit's ears were not sensitive, at this moment, his senses were magnified by several times. The N made Poplar Fruit instantly. Walking in the middle of the suspension bridge, the two of them almost fell into the bottomless abyss. "Calm down. Poplar Fruit. How could you let your imagination run wild? Yujie trusts you so much, yet you still want to take advantage of her." Poplar Fruit scolded himself fiercely in his heart. It took him a lot of effort to suppress his surging emotions. Fortunately, Zheng Yujie was too frightened by the unfathomable cliff to move. Otherwise, the Poplar Fruit would not be able to withstand the heat she was feeling at this moment. She only needed to add fuel to the fire to the Poplar Fruit to make him unable to bear it. After calming down a little, Poplar Fruit felt an itch on his neck. However, as he needed to look in front, Poplar Fruit didn't look down until he got off the suspension bridge. It turned out that it was Zheng Yujie's hair that had reached his neck. Something's not right. Poplar Fruit placed Zheng Yujie down and patted Zheng Yujie's shoulder. "We're coming." Zheng Yujie opened her eyes at this time, but her legs were weak. Everyone waited for a while to let her recover. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Poplar Fruit carefully looked at Zheng Yujie. No wonder he kept feeling that she was different this time. The neat short hair was gone. Instead, it was replaced by soft and smooth long hair. It was not too long, just past her shoulders. The fine strands of hair still made her look very refreshing. This was very consistent with Zheng Yujie's temperament. No wonder Poplar Fruit had not noticed it. Sensing Poplar Fruit's gaze, Zheng Yujia's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. She charmingly winked at Poplar Fruit, and then her slender left hand brushed her left ear, tucking the disobedient hair behind her ear. Okay, I saw it all. Poplar Fruit looked at her showing off in amusement and said, "When did you start to have long hair?" Kiki, who was standing at the side pulling on her father's trousers, also looked curiously at Zheng Yujia. Her big eyes turned as if she thought of something. Then, she raised her little hand high and shouted happily, "Papa, Papa!" I know. The two people were talking, but the little girl's voice forcibly squeezed in. Poplar Fruit smiled, patted her little head, and asked, "What do you know?" Kiki knows. Seeing that her father did not care, Kiki was not convinced. She put her hands on her small waist, raised her head and said angrily, "Kiki knows why Auntie has long hair." Why? Before Zheng Yujia could stop her, Poplar Fruit asked curiously. Zheng Yujia quickly grabbed Kiki's little arm, not wanting her to say it, but Kiki's little mouth was faster. She proudly said, "Because Papa likes long hair." Poplar Fruit stared blankly at Kiki, who was in Zheng Yujia's arms. He was confused and did not understand why Kiki said that. He remembered that he had never told anyone that he liked girls with long hair. Of course, Poplar Fruit had this tendency. He did have a special liking for girls with long hair, but it could not be said that he had a long hair fetish. When he first entered the university and chased after Lu Yunran still had standard short hair. Since Kiki had already exposed it, Zheng Yujia did not stop her. Kiki began to explain the cause and effect of the matter in a childish voice. When Auntie was in the capital, she asked Kiki if Papa liked girls with long hair. Of course Papa likes long hair. Kiki has long hair, so beautiful. So Auntie has long hair. After saying that, the little girl nodded seriously, as if to express affirmation of her own reasoning. Poplar Fruit stared blankly at Kiki. He knew that Kiki would not lie, but this reason was too far-fetched. Because of a child's joke he had changed his image all this time? However, when Poplar Fruit moved his eyes from Kiki to Zheng Yujia's, his eyes finally met. Zheng Yujia did not deny, and did not try to hide, but bravely faced Poplar Fruit. Her eyes moved, and there was deep affection in them. Poplar Fruit stared blankly. He felt that the softest part of his heart had been hit. Moved, tangled, struggling. Too many complex emotions stirred in his mind, and Poplar Fruit was almost dizzy. This was not right. No matter how wooden Poplar Fruit was, he still felt a little uneasy. After a while he said, "What should I say to you? You used to be quite good-looking, but you had to listen to Kiki's nonsense." Poplar Fruit sighed deeply and said, "I don't really like girls with long hair, not only girls with long hair. Besides, you don't have to change because of me." However, Zheng Yujia did not intend to continue with Poplar Fruit's topic. She knew that the man in front of her was silly and cute when it came to feelings. He still had not accepted her, and if she let Poplar Fruit continue, it would be the rhythm of a showdown. "Do I not look good with long hair now?" Zheng Yujia scratched her hair with her hand and looked at Poplar Fruit's eyes with a smile. Yes. Poplar Fruit was very honest. He sized her up and seriously commented, "You're more feminine than before. But you used to be quite good too. That was you, but now you're forcing yourself to change a hairstyle that you don't like because of my opinion," Poplar Fruit anxiously explained. Kiki snuggled in Zheng Yujia's arms and looked at her father and auntie in confusion. She did not understand at all what the two of them were arguing about. "How do you know that I don't like it?" Zheng Yujia raised her head proudly. "I think it's quite good now. You said it yourself. I'm more feminine than before. I just like being feminine." Poplar Fruit did not know what to say this time. Instead, Zheng Yujia dragged him up and said in a nonchalant tone, "Let's go. It's just a change of hairstyle. What's there to be troubled about? Hurry up. I want to see the stilted house you've been living in for the past few days." Well, it was meaningless to be troubled. Poplar Fruit simply did not think about these troublesome things anymore. He smiled, picked up the box he was responsible for, and led everyone to the Hmong village. The mountain breeze blew, and a few strings of bell-like laughter echoed in the valley. Kiki, don't you think Auntie is more beautiful now? Yes, yes, just like Kiki. You're so beautiful, so beautiful. Huh? Chapter 579. After arriving at the Hmong village, Zheng Yujia's capable and fashionable dress attracted the curious onlookers of the Hmong people, especially the children of the Hmong tribe. After tasting the sweetness of poplar fruit, they all flocked to Zheng Yujia and reached out their small hands to ask for delicious food. Zheng Yujia was embarrassed. She was not prepared for anything. When she came, she was only thinking about seeing poplar fruit happily, and there was no room for second thoughts in her mind. Fortunately, Xiong Kahu waved the bamboo pole to drive away the energetic children, and Zheng Yujia was able to calm down. Xiong Jiji and some other young adults carried the computer and other things to the school in the village first, and poplar fruit took Zheng Yujia to the place where they lived first. Because of the sudden arrival, Xiong Jiwu was not prepared. At this moment, Yi Nuzang and Xiong Xiaolin hurriedly tidied up the room next to poplar fruits. Their house was quite big, and there were many empty rooms, but there were some sundries in them. If they were not tidied up, they would not be able to live in them. Xiong Xiaolin wiped the windows and looked at Zheng Yujia enviously. Although Zheng Yujia's shoes were stained with a lot of mud, they were still clean and beautiful. She knew that she was going up the mountain, so she wore a slim-fit mountaineering outfit today. She had a pair of leggings, and the hem of her shirt was tucked in with a belt. She looked valiant and formidable. In Xiong Xiaolin's eyes, she was the image of a successful woman, and she was so handsome. Poplar Fruit carried Zheng Yujia's suitcase and put it in his room first, and Zheng Yujia followed behind with Kiki in her arms. Kiki and I will stay here for a while. Poplar Fruit pointed to the wooden bed and laughed. Remember to cover yourself with a quilt at night. Although it's summer, it will be very cold on the mountain at night. You're really a monster. Zheng Yujia did not respond to Poplar Fruit's words, but poked Poplar Fruit's waist and muttered, "How come you can even speak Miao language?" When they first entered the village, many of the children of Miao village did not speak Mandarin. Zheng Yujia was a little overwhelmed by the Miao language, but fortunately, Poplar Fruit was beside her and translated for her. "Hey, I learned it after I came," Poplar Fruit said proudly. "So fast?" Zheng Yujia asked in surprise. "You've learned it in just a few days. Monster, monster." "That's true. I don't dare to say anything else, but when it comes to language, there really isn't anything that can be difficult for me." Yonggui used her right thumb to wipe the bridge of her nose, and said confidently, "You're bragging." It was Chi-Chi who learned it first. Kiki could not stand Poplar Fruit's proud look. She could not help but turn Aunt Zheng Yujia's face to herself, then pointed at her father and pouted. Zheng Yujia looked at the gloomy Yonggui and laughed out loud. She laughed so hard that her body trembled. After a simple tidying up, Poplar Fruit took Zheng Yujia to the school in the village. After all, Zheng Yujia's arrival was a surprise, and now they had to get down to business. At that moment, the school, which was built on a two-story building on a higher ground, was surrounded by the children of the Hmong village. If it were not for Xiong Jisher, who was commanding a few strong men to block the entrance, they would have rushed in. There were also a few curious villagers who came over to watch. They stuck their heads out and looked in through the window to see what was so magical. Inside the school, Xiong Kahu was already pacing back and forth. He was so anxious that he could not sit still. He did not understand the equipment, and did not dare to touch it. A Miao person even proposed to open the box to take a look, but he rejected it loudly. Xiong Kahu was afraid that he would break the things that the children would use for lessons in the future. Seeing Poplar Fruit come in, Xiong Kahu glanced at Zheng Yujia and nodded as a greeting. Then, he did not wait for Poplar Fruit to be long-winded and pulled him to quickly pack the things up. Xiong Kahu went outside to take a look, then came back to Poplar Fruit and asked curiously, "Why aren't you moving?" "Hey master, don't walk around." Poplar Fruit did not know whether to laugh or cry. He pointed at the stool and asked Xiong Kahu to sit down, then said, "Aren't I reading the manual? I'll understand how to do it after reading it." If it were other computers, Poplar Fruit could just get started since they were all the same anyway. However, the Comet system computers that Zheng Yujia bought were new things. Poplar fruit did not know if there would be anything special about them, so he first read the manual before assembling them. I didn't bring Kai Si-min with me this time. Zheng Yujie squatted beside Poplar fruit and helped him carry the power cord and plastic packaging film in the box. If you read it, then we'll place a big order and ask him to be responsible for assembling everything. Poplar fruit nodded. He quickly finished reading the few pages of the manual. Although he did not understand a lot of the circuits, it did not stop him from memorizing them all. It turned out that this computer was even simpler than the ones they usually used. Poplar fruit first unpacked the display screen that Zheng Yujie bought and placed it on an empty table. Xiongkahu saw it and could not sit still. He walked over and looked at it, afraid that the display screen would not be stable and fall off the table. Next was the power cord and the adapter. Because there were no electrical appliances in the school before, even the hot water was brought by the children from home. It took a long time to find a plug in the corner. Fortunately, Yanghua had brought her CRT over. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to plug into the computer if she plugged in the display. Even so, the table for debugging the computer had to be moved to the other side. Sigh, if I had known, I would have brought a few more plugs. Zheng Yujie said with some annoyance. She had lived in a big city since she was young, and there were plugs everywhere in her room. How could she have thought of buying a plug? It's okay, we'll go to the county to buy one tomorrow. Poplar fruit smiled as he comforted Zheng Yujie. Moreover, Fat Dragon should be arriving tomorrow. When they went to pick him up, it would not be too difficult to buy the plug. Although there were many twists and turns, the computer could be booted up immediately after it was connected to the power source. It was worth mentioning that, just as Zheng Yujie said before, this computer did not have a main computer. Kai Si-min put the main computer inside the keyboard. Although the keyboard looked a little bloated, it was not too thick. At most, it could be considered as a normal keyboard with 2 books. This showed the advantage of the Comet system. It was too light. All the parts were small, and compared to a mobile phone, it was definitely too much. However, compared to a computer, it was the difference between a J-10 and a Boeing. It's booting up. Poplar fruit looked at the display screen with hope. It was not the familiar Windows interface, nor was it like an Apple computer. Instead, it was a simple animation of a comet passing by and coming back. However, what surprised Poplar fruit was that the booting speed was very fast. It only took 20 seconds to boot up. Just that, looking at the completely unfamiliar system behind, Poplar fruit was stunned. How was he going to play this? Chapter 580. On this mountain with extremely simple living facilities, Zheng Yujie felt very uncomfortable. During the meal, the sour fish in the big bowl looked black and had a layer of chili oil floating on it. Zheng Yujie also saw Xiong Xiaofeng licking her chopsticks and putting them in the bowl to pick. She had no appetite at all. In the end, Poplar fruit put down his chopsticks and went to make her a light fried pork with pickled vegetables. Zheng Yujie enjoyed the same special treatment as Kiki. Next was the room, which was not bad. The window was bright, and one could see the green mountains when one walked out. But it was a little simple inside. The bed was made of wood, and the quilt looked very old, exuding a strange smell. Zheng Yujie refused to use it, so Poplar fruit had to exchange his own for hers. Finally, there was a shower. There was no comfortable shower head, so to take a shower, Poplar fruit had to help her carry 2 buckets of spring water. Fortunately, the weather was hot, and the cold shower was comfortable, so there was no need to bother boiling water. The bathroom was also a small wooden house next to the wooden house. It was airy, and Zheng Yujie felt uncomfortable. After taking a shower, Zheng Yujie carried her changed clothes to Poplar fruit's room and asked, "Where's the washing machine?" Poplar fruit looked up and saw a girl with a red face standing in front of him. Poplar fruit could not help but be stunned. She was really different. In the past, Zheng Yujie looked like a tomboy with short hair. Although her body was hot, her attractiveness was limited. Now that she had long hair, the whole person looked full of charm. Her long moist hair was slightly curled and spread out, and the fair skin on her neck seemed to be moist. Her delicate collarbone, smooth skin, and proud curves wrapped in the round-neck t-shirt All showed the most seductive posture of a woman. Seeing Poplar Fruit's fiery gaze, Zheng Yujie was happy instead of angry. However, Poplar Fruit quickly looked away, not daring to look directly at Zheng Yujie. That was because he saw a pink strap hanging from the pile of clothes in Zheng Yujie's arms. There was no mistaking it. It was a bra strap. There's no washing machine. You can only wash them by hand, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. Don't expect a washing machine or a refrigerator here. Ah, Zheng Yujie wailed and walked into Poplar Fruit's line of sight. She looked at him and asked, "What should I do?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Wash it by hand." "But I don't know how to wash." Zheng Yujie bashfully nudged Poplar Fruit with her shoulder and said, "Can you help me wash it?" What she said after that was sweet and greasy, not like Zheng Yujie's original style. Poplar Fruit should have had goosebumps, but when he saw Zheng Yujie's feminine look after changing her hair, his heart couldn't help but waver. But how could he agree to this request? Zheng Yujie's clothes had underwear. Thinking of her pink strap, Poplar Fruit felt a little hot in his head. "You don't want to?" Zheng Yujie saw that he didn't say anything, so she nudged him again and said unhappily, "You helped me wash it before. You can't deny it." Of course, Poplar Fruit still remembered. That was last year, and the scene that he shouldn't have seen the next day was still lingering in Poplar Fruit's mind. Poplar Fruit smiled bitterly and said, "But, no buts." Zheng Yujie directly blocked Poplar Fruit's way of retreat, and put her hand on Poplar Fruit's waist. She threatened him with her actions and said sweetly, "Okay? I'm so tired today. I want to sleep." At this time Kiki, who was dozing off at the side, got up from the bed. She kicked off the small quilt and waved at Zheng Yujie. "Auntie, can you accompany Kiki to sleep?" Okay. Zheng Yujie smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. She immediately stuffed the clothes into Poplar Fruit's arms and climbed onto the big bed with a smile. Then she rolled together with Kiki. "Aya, Auntie, you're so heavy," Kiki shouted. "Kiki, you're the heavy one. Come, let Auntie give you a kiss and a hug," Zheng Yujie also shouted. "Wow, Auntie, you smell so good." Kiki's voice was muffled, as if her little head was blocked. Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry looking at them. He gloomily held the clothes that Zheng Yujie shamelessly stuffed into his hands. However, as Kiki said, Zheng Yujie's clothes also seemed to exude her body fragrance. It was also warm, as if it was just taken off from her body. Poplar Fruit's heart couldn't help but ripple. It seemed that Zheng Yujie didn't intend to wash her own clothes. With a sigh, Yanghua had no choice but to take her clothes and go downstairs. Washing clothes alone is a very boring thing, but a man washing a woman's clothes, especially a beautiful woman's clothes, including the most private underwear, is a good thing that is painful but happy. How much charm and gentleness is in this? There is no need to go into details. I know Poplar Fruit knows that's enough. In fact, when Zheng Yujie stuffed all the clothes into Poplar Fruit's arms, her face also turned red. Although she was usually carefree like a tomboy, but in reality, Zheng Yujie is still a young lady who hasn't done anything. In order to cover up her shyness, Zheng Yujie ran to the bed and played with Kiki. Until Poplar Fruit left, she dared to raise her head and peek quietly. However, Zheng Yujie was really tired. The fatigue of the journey, plus the tossing of the day, Zheng Yujie and Kiki played with each other. In the end, the two actually fell asleep. When Poplar Fruit came back from drying the clothes, it was only 8 o'clock. He saw Zheng Yujie and Kiki sleeping soundly on the bed, and he couldn't bear to disturb them. Zheng Yujie often took over the nest. Poplar Fruit was mentally prepared, so he smiled and covered Zheng Yujie and Kiki with the mosquito net and quilt. Then he left and went to the room that originally belonged to Zheng Yujie. After playing on the computer for a while, Poplar Fruit's cell phone vibrated. At this time, it should be Bebe calling. Poplar Fruit picked up the cell phone and looked at the lit screen in a daze. What should I do? There is a girl next door who clearly confessed to me. After Fong Bebe asked him to do some self-reflection, Poplar Fruit understood his own thoughts. First of all, the girl he loved was indeed Fong Bebe. And Zheng Yujie, it couldn't be considered love. It could only be said that it was an attraction between friends of the opposite sex. However, recently, there was a lot of touching. This made Poplar Fruit a little scared. Secondly, the wife he wanted to marry and the stepmother he wanted to find for Kiki. So far, Poplar Fruit only had Fong Beibei in his mind. However, seeing Zheng Yujia's continuous affection and sincerity, Poplar Fruit couldn't bear it. The most important thing now was whether he should tell Fong Beibei about Zheng Yujia coming over. Since knowing Fong Beibei, Poplar Fruit had been very serious about this relationship. Not to mention lying, he didn't even have this thought. However, in today's matter, Poplar Fruit really had a difficult choice. Perhaps sometimes a white lie was a better choice. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.